Chapter 29, 10. Chun Yuanshui exited seclusion. Let's go all out. I cultivate the Panga's sacred body after all, and my self-healing ability is extremely strong. I don't believe that this Yama demon portrait can really suck me dry. Zhuowen's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. He bit his thumb and covered it with the end of the Yama demon portrait scroll. Zhuowen's body trembled as if he was struck by lightning. He felt his blood essence being sucked uncontrollably by the scroll, and the blood in his body was flowing in reverse at an extremely fast speed. The next day, when Sun Ruyu knocked on the door of the sect leader's hall, she saw a greasy young man with shriveled cheeks and dull eyes. If it weren't for the young man's clothes, Sun Ruyu almost couldn't recognize him as Zhuowen. "Brother Ma, what happened to you? What happened last night?" Sun Ruyu asked curiously. Zhuowen, with panda eyes, said reluctantly, "It's nothing. I was too excited last night and couldn't sleep. The sect leader succession ceremony is about to begin. Let's go." With that, Zhuowen staggered the moment he stepped out of the door. If Sun Ruoyu hadn't caught Zhuowen in time, Zhuowen would have fallen flat on his face. "Brother Ma, are you sure you're okay?" Sun Ruoyu asked worriedly. "It's nothing. It's just a side effect of insomnia. Help me out." Zhuowen forced a smile, but he was cursing in his heart. Last night, his blood essence was almost sucked dry by the Yama demon portrait several times. If it weren't for his freakish self-healing ability, Zhuowen would have died many times over. However, Zhuowen was quite satisfied with the final result. The Yama demon portrait had indeed developed a sense of dependence on him, and it had successfully recognized him as its master. The sect leader succession ceremony was held in the largest square in the sect. At this moment, the square was empty. All the cultivators in the sect had come, and their faces were filled with excitement. At the front of the square, there was a huge platform. At this moment, there were 6 figures with powerful auras standing on the platform. These 6 people were the 6 elders that Zhuowen had bestowed with the Heaven's Mandate Pill. The 6 elders' auras were far stronger than they had been 7 days ago. One of them had even become a half-step Heaven's Mandate Lord. Clearly, the 6 of them had used all 6 of their special-grade destiny pills, and the effects were quite good. The 6 were all grateful to Zhuowen. Destiny pills. Zhuowen, they hoped that he would give them more destiny pills. They knew that the destiny pills, with the destiny pill as the destiny pills, they would be able to become destiny masters in a short time and become master. They the second step Dao proving realm Dao, the realm stage realm. Everyone, come. Sun Ruoyu translation, Sun translation, Sun translation, and translation, translation. It had only been a single night. How did this powerful new grandmaster of the past turn into such a weak chicken? Translation, sect, master. The master was no, and understood master, and know that master and sun master, T.S. master, masters, master. Translation to win translation black lines appeared on his forehead when he saw the elder's teasing expression. What was this old man thinking? Sun Ruyu also heard the elder's implied meaning. She spat, her ears turning red. Okay, let's begin the sect master succession ceremony. Sun Ruyu changed the topic. The 6 elders naturally had no objections, and the succession ceremony that followed was very boring. It was nothing more than Zhuo when going up to say a few words and express his thoughts. Then, as the granddaughter of the old sect master, Sun Ruoyu would officially hand over the sect master's token to Zhuowen. Although Zhuowen had already obtained the sect master's token, it was still a ceremony. In order to win over the hearts of the people, Zhuowen promised to distribute more Dao-gathering pills within half a year, which received warm applause from the crowd. Wait, just as the ceremony was about to end, a loud roar came from the distance. Everyone looked over and saw two streaks of light fly over and land directly on the high platform above the square. The person in the lead was a middle-aged man with sharp eyes like a hawk, and beside him was a man with a charred face. Zhuowen was no stranger to the black-faced man behind the middle-aged man. Naturally, it was Chun Xiong, who had been struck by the lightning array 7 days ago. The lightning generated by the lightning array set up by Zhuowen was no ordinary lightning. Although Chun Xiong was a Dao-confirming powerhouse, it was impossible for him to recover in a short time after being severely injured by such powerful lightning. As soon as Chun Xiong landed on the high platform, he stared at Zhuowen. His skin was originally very white, but now it was completely charred, and he was almost disfigured. His resentment towards Zhuowen was very deep. Zhuowen ignored Chun Xiong and looked at the middle-aged man in front of Chun Xiong, saying, "Chun Yuanshui? Good eyesight. You've guessed this old man's identity." Chun Yuanshui's eyes flashed with pride, and then a powerful aura suddenly emerged from his body, increasing the pressure on the entire square. The moment everyone in the square felt this pressure, their scalps tingled, and they exclaimed, "Heaven's Mandate Master! Elder Qin has successfully advanced to Heaven's Mandate Master." Sun Ruoyu's eyes also changed slightly. She remembered that Qin Yuanshui hadn't been in seclusion for long, but he actually came out so quickly and smoothly broke through. This was really beyond her expectations. Hearing the exclamations of the crowd below, Qin Yuanshui looked at Zhuowen proudly and said, "I heard that you're called Ma Yujia, right? And I also heard that you're a Heaven's Mandate Divine Array Master and a Heaven's Mandate Alchemist, but you're a little weak. Originally, the trouble you caused in the sect was enough for me to sentence you to death, but I'm magnanimous and can let you live on the premise that you hand over the sect master's token, kneel down, and swear loyalty to this old man. As long as you do these, this old man will let bygones be bygones and will use you again, making you the most important dog in this old man's life." Just as Chun Yuanshui finished speaking, he felt that the atmosphere around him was strange. This was because the crowd below the stage didn't raise any voices of support for him. Instead, they looked on coldly, and the young man supported by Sun Ruoyu was looking at Chun Yuanshui mockingly, as if he was looking at a clown. This kind of silent contempt made Chun Yuanshui's heart burn with anger. He coldly said, "What? Are you looking down on this old man?" As he spoke, Chun Yuanshui's aura grew stronger. He didn't hesitate to release the powerful energy that belonged to a Heaven's Mandate Master. "You're just a clown. I don't even want to look at you." Zhuowen shook his head speechlessly. This Chun Yuanshui was just a Heaven's Mandate Master. In his eyes, he was no different from a clown. "You're courting death." Chun Yuanshui was enraged by Zhuowen's disregard. He stomped his right foot and blasted a palm at Zhuowen. Powerful energy ripples formed a vast palm shadow in the air, and it fell on Zhuowen's head. He wanted to use his absolute advantage to destroy this arrogant brat. Unfortunately, a sword light flashed, and the palm was destroyed. Chun Yuanshui didn't even have time to react. He felt pain in his limbs and fell to the ground. Chapter 29:11. Leaving without saying goodbye, Chun Yuanshui's face was filled with terror as he watched his limbs being chopped off. Blood splattered everywhere as he fell into a pool of blood, completely at a loss. He looked in horror at the young man who was being supported by Sun Ruoyu, as well as the blood-red divine sword floating beside the young man. He knew that it was the blood-red divine sword floating beside Zhuowen that had chopped off his limbs in an instant. This blood-colored divine sword was too terrifying. He couldn't even see the trajectory of the divine sword clearly, and his limbs were inexplicably chopped off. What kind of speed and strength did one need to have to do this? Sun Royu was also stunned. She didn't even know how Zhuowen did it. All she saw was Chun Yuanshui lying in a pool of blood. On the other hand, everyone in the square was dumbstruck. They were completely dumbfounded. What was going on? After all, Chun Yuanshui was the strongest person in the giant spirit sect. He was just about to teach Zhuowen a lesson when his limbs were chopped off. It was too strange. Of course, when many people came back to their senses, they noticed the blood-red divine soared beside Zhuowen and revealed expressions of relief and awe. They knew that Qin Yuanshui's current state was definitely caused by the blood-red divine sword. To be able to instantly chop off the limbs of a heaven's mandate master, this blood-red divine sword must be a divine artifact that surpassed the heaven's mandate level. Everyone finally knew why the young man in front of them was so fearless from the beginning. It turned out that he had such a powerful divine artifact on him. The 6 elders on the high platform rejoiced in their hearts. They secretly exclaimed that they had sought refuge with this young man early. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Chun Yuanshui, who was lying on the ground, was a living example. Miss Ruoyu, I'll leave this clown to you to deal with. Zhuowen said to Sun Ruoyu beside him and left the square. There were too many things he needed to do. He needed to return Sun Ruoyu's favor, familiarize himself with the Yama ghost portrait, and prepare for the star battlefield. Therefore, Zhuowen didn't want to waste extra time on a clown like Chun Yuanshui. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. The news of Zhuowen's arrest within the Incorp sect was much more relaxed than before. Moreover, as the news of ancestor Magus Gong's death spread out, most of the cultivators were now discussing how to get a share of the loot. For the past 3 months, Zhuowen had spent most of his time in the sect master's Great Hall. During this time, other than studying the god's divination secret and familiarizing himself with the Yama ghost portrait, he had been refining divine pills in large quantities. He mainly refined Heaven's Mandate pills, Profound Element pills, and Eternal pills. Of course, he refined the most Heaven's Mandate pills. As for the Profound Element pills and Eternal pills, he only refined a single bottle. Profound Secrets pills and Eternal pills were almost non-existent in the Great Spirit sect. After all, the Great Spirit sect didn't even have experts like the Profound Secrets Lord and Eternal Lords. As such, these 2 spirit pills weren't of much use to the Great Spirit sect. He'd refined 1 bottle each, and it was mainly for Sun Ruoyu. He'd seen Sun Ruoyu and knew that she possessed an earth-rank ancestral Tao root. Moreover, her natural talent was extremely good, and it was very likely for her to attain the Eternal Lord realm in the future. He refined these 3 divine pills mainly to pave the way for Sun Ruoyu's future cultivation. Of course, Zhuowen refined the most Tao-gathering pill. This kind of divine pill was useful to all the disciples in the sect, so its consumption was huge. Moreover, the medicinal ingredients for the Tao-gathering pill were very simple, but it was very particular about the refining technique. Zhuowen was a peak eternal level alchemist, so his refining technique was definitely the most advanced. Refining the Tao-gathering pill was really easy for him, and it wasn't a problem at all. Another 2 months passed, and Zhuowen had a deeper understanding of the god's divination secret. He had also completely perfected the flaws of his self-created ability, Destiny Space-Time Slaughter. The current Destiny Space-Time Slaughter was more than several times stronger than when Zhuowen had first created it. In the last month, Zhuowen let Sun Ruoyu live in the sect master's Great Hall. At that time, everyone in the sect was moved, and rumors of the new sect master and Sun Ruoyu began to spread. It caused many people in the sect to gossip, and various versions were spread. However, a month later, Sun Ruoyu walked out of the sect master's great hall, and everyone in the sect was moved. Because Sun Ruoyu's cultivation had broken through to the heaven's mandate master in one fell swoop, shocking the entire sect. Everyone knew that before Sun Ruoyu entered the sect master's great hall, she was only a peak heavenly Tao master. But in just a month, she actually became a heaven's mandate master powerhouse, and her realm suddenly increased by 2 small realms and 1 big realm. This was really incredible. Even Sun Ruoyu felt incredulous, but she had to believe it because it really happened to her. However, Sun Ruoyu didn't have any happy expression. She silently looked at the spirit ring in her hand, and her eyes showed a dim look. In the month when Zhuowen helped her break through, she already had a bad premonition. After she had successfully broken through to the heaven's mandate master, Zhuowen gave her the spirit ring, the sect master's token, and the god's divination secret. Zhuowen left, leaving only a divine thought sound transmission before leaving the giant spirit sect. And this divine thought sound transmission was to step down from the position of sect master and give it to Sun Ruoyu. He probably already planned to do this when he succeeded as sect master. Sun Ruoyu sighed softly and muttered to herself. On a mountain peak thousands of miles away from the giant spirit sect, a figure silently looked in the direction of the giant spirit sect. This was a young man dressed in black. The young man had 2 scars on his face, and his eyes were as bright as the moon. This young man was naturally Zhuowen. After the half-year deadline was up, he had already used the god's divination technique to find a way out of the 10 ultimate in-corpse sect's domain for him. Therefore, after he secretly handed the sect master's token and the god's divination secret to Sun Ruoyu, he chose to leave without saying goodbye. However, Zhuowen didn't feel guilty. In the past 6 months, he had done enough for the giant spirit sect, so he had a clear conscience. Maybe I won't have the chance to come here again in the future, Zhuowen muttered to himself. Then his figure flashed and disappeared from the mountain peak. The favor he asked Sun Ruoyu had been completely repaid. In the past 6 months, he had indeed done what the sect master should have done. Moreover, he had refined a large number of divine pills and set up powerful array restrictions in most areas of the giant spirit sect. In particular, the giant spirit sect's Great Sect Protection Array. On the surface, it looked like an ordinary Heaven's Mandate Great Array, but in fact, there was another world inside. Once the ordinary Heaven's Mandate Great Array was broken, it would activate the Eternal Level Great Sect Protection Array hidden inside this ordinary Great Array. It should be known that those who could have an Eternal Level Great Sect Protection Array were basically the treatment of the more powerful forces at the Tao Mansion level. It could be said that with the layers of array restrictions that the giant spirit sect now had, ordinary forces at the Tao Mansion level would inevitably suffer a great loss if they wanted to attack the giant spirit sect. Even if a powerful Tao Mansion level force attacked the giant spirit sect, they might be able to destroy the current giant spirit sect, but they would definitely have to pay a great price. Chapter 29:12. Returning to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. After Zhuowen left the giant spirit sect, he did not immediately leave the 10 Extremities in-corpse sect. Instead, he headed towards the core sect of the 10 Extremities in-corpse sect. He had already calculated that a month ago, most of the upper echelons of the sect, including sect leader Senki Yin and Great Elder Gao Yonghong, had already left the sect and headed towards the Star Wars battlefield. It could be said that the current 10 Extremities in-corpse sect was at its weakest. Of course, Zhuowen did not return to the 10 Extremities in-corpse sect for the sake of the in-corpse sect. Although most of the upper echelons of the 10 Extremities in-corpse sect had left, the sect protecting formation in the 10 Extremities in-corpse sect was not to be trifled with. He felt that the Great Sect Protecting Array was at least at the creation realm. The power of such a huge great sect protecting array was very terrifying, especially with so many cultivators in the sect working together. No matter how big Zhuowen's courage was, he would not dare to challenge such a colossal sect alone. The reason he returned to the Ten Extremities Corp sect was naturally because the ancient transportation formation of the Ten Extremities Corp sect had been unsealed. He wanted to use the ancient transportation formation of the Ten Extremities Corp sect to return to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance first. However, as Zhuowen got closer and closer to the Ten Extremities Corp sect, he realized that there were still wanted posters for him everywhere. It was just that the security was not as tight as before. When Zhuowen arrived at the entrance of the Ten Extremities Corp sect, he was stopped by the gatekeeper as expected. Zhuowen did not panic. Instead, he used the heavenly divination technique to temporarily change the trajectory of his fate, causing the gatekeeper to mistakenly think that Zhuowen was a disciple of the sect. After bluffing his way through, Zhuowen smoothly entered the Ten Extremities Corp sect. After entering the sect, Zhuowen realized that the Ten Extremities Corp sect was much more deserted than the first time he had come. I'm so envious of the seniors and juniors who have obtained the right to go to the Star Wars battlefield. Once Gongong's grave appears, they will have a chance to enter and obtain great opportunities. It can't be helped. There are so many people in the Ten Extremities Corp sect. Do we have to leave the entire sect? That's obviously not realistic. Moreover, you and I are merely heavenly Dao masters, so we naturally don't have the qualifications to go with them. Along the way, Zhuowen heard a lot about the place where Gong Gong had fallen in the Starry Sky battlefield. Soon, Zhuowen arrived at the sect's ancient transportation formation. Paying a fee, Zhuowen left the sect's Corp's Ten Extremities Corp sect. The outcome was unexpectedly smooth, causing Zhuowen to be in disbelief. The art of heavenly divination is truly miraculous. It really did help me escape from danger. However, every time I use the art of heavenly divination, it will consume my lifespan. As Zhuowen muttered to himself, he appeared in the transfer array of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Zhuowen walked out of the teleportation array and immediately heard a familiar voice. Immortal Master Zhuo, you're finally back. I sent you many messages, but you didn't reply. Where have you been all this time? Zhuowen turned around and saw an old man with a solemn expression. He was looking at Zhuowen in surprise. Zhuowen smiled when he saw the old man. This old man was no stranger to Zhuowen. He was one of the 5 great immortal masters of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, Huan Taiping. He was also the immortal master who had the best relationship with Zhuowen. I was in a hurry recently, so I didn't pay attention to the communication jade talisman. That's why I didn't know that immortal master Huan sent me a message. Zhuowen replied politely. Of course, Zhuowen knew that Huan Taiping had sent him a message. However, he had been on the run at that time, so he didn't have the time to reply to Huan Taiping. Later on, he had forgotten about this matter. So that's how it is. I heard that the 10 Extremes Corp sect had issued a warrant for a cultivator named Zhuowen. I thought it was you. I was just about to head to the 10 Extremes Corp sect to confirm when you came back. It seems like the Zhuowen wanted by the 10 Extremes Corp sect is just someone with the same name as you, Huan Taiping said with a smile. Zhuowen said awkwardly, Immortal Master Huan, actually, the Zhuowen wanted by the 10 Extremes Corp sect is me. Huan Taiping's expression froze. His eyes widened as he stared at Zhuowen. No way, the 10 Extremes Corp sect really is you. Zhuowen forced a smile and nodded. The 10 Extremes Corp sect has guts. You're an immortal master of our Pill Array Immortal Alliance. You have a high status, yet they dare to issue a warrant for you. Immortal Master Zhua, why would the 10 Extremes in Corpse sect issue a warrant for you? Huan Taiping's expression became serious. Zhuowen shook his head and said, "It's a long story. It's not convenient to talk about it here. Take me to see the alliance leader first." The matter of the 10 Extremes in Corpse sect was related to the secret of the dead flower. Zhuowen naturally would not speak of it casually. It was not that he did not trust Huan Taiping, but this matter was too important. He planned to talk about it after seeing Ji Wuming. "Okay, the alliance leader is in the Immortal Alliance. I'll take you there." Huan Taiping saw that Zhuowen found it difficult to talk about it, so he did not ask further. He quickly took Zhuowen to the cave residence where Ji Wuming was at. On the way, Zhuowen asked Huan Taiping about the place where Gong Gong had fallen, and learned that this news was known to almost every household in the host region, causing a great commotion. It was said that this news was deliberately released by the 10 Extremes in Corpse sect leader, Senki In. What surprised Zhuowen even more was that this news was not only widely spread in the host region, but also in the other 3 precept regions of the Xianmi heavenly domain. Even the foreign tribes on the other side of the starry sky battlefield were extremely enthusiastic about it. It was because of this news that countless experts of the 4 precept regions of the Xianmi heavenly domain, as well as the experts of the foreign tribes on the other side of the starry sky battlefield, gathered in the starry sky battlefield. Immortal Master Huan, our Pillaray Immortal Alliance does not plan to send people to the starry sky battlefield. Zhuowen asked in surprise. Huan Taiping shook his head and said, "Our Pillaray Immortal Alliance is just a bunch of guys who refine pills and set up arrays. Our battle strength is generally very low. We will only be cannon fodder if we go there. However, the Alliance leader has many cultivator friends. He told his friends that if they can find precious divine medicines and materials in the place where Gong Gong died, they should bring some back." Zhuowen nodded, but he was deep in thought. He felt that Senki In should have deliberately leaked this news. As for why he did so, Zhuowen also learned from Ghost Plume that it was to let the other cultivators share the risk. It was said that when Senki In found out about the place where Gong Gong died, he did not dare to take the risk of going in alone. If even an early-stage master heavenly domain expert like Senki In was afraid of this place, it was definitely not a good place. Thinking of this, Zhuowen was not in a hurry to go to the starry sky battlefield. He was sure that the first batch of cultivators to enter would not be Senki In or the other major powers who knew about the inside story. They were usually rogue cultivators who did not belong to any sections. They were definitely cannon fodder for those major powers to explore. After all, Ghost Plume was Senki Yin's illegitimate son. He knew a lot about Senki Yin's plans, especially about the place where Gong Gong died. Chapter 29:13. Informing the dead man Flower the Dark Ancient City was the most mysterious and terrifying place in the Star Wars battlefield. Back then, in the Dark City, Sun Qin saw Gong Gong's finger sweep across his eyes from a long distance away. Moreover, wherever that finger passed, the water roared and turned into a boundless ocean. Although Senki In had only seen the finger, he could guess that it was Gong Gong's finger. Gong Gong was the master of water power among the 12 ancestral shamans. He was the source of all water power. With just a flick of his finger, he was able to turn the place into a vast ocean. Apart from ancestor Magus Gong Gong, no one else could do that. After Senki In guessed that it was ancestral shaman Gong Gong's finger, he realized that there was probably Gong Gong's complete corpse in the Dark Ancient City. This must be the place where Gong Gong had fallen. Back then, Senki In had chased the finger all the way into the Dark Ancient City. However, because he had gone too deep and the depths of the dark ancient city were too terrifying, Senki-in had finally given up after weighing the pros and cons. This was because he could feel that there was a power in the depths of the dark ancient city that made him very wary. Although he could go in and explore if he wanted to, he would have to pay a very painful price. Senki-in was not someone who would do things that he was not confident in, so he did not go too deep into the dark ancient city in the end. Instead, he took the initiative to retreat. Back then, Zhuowen had learned from Ghost Plume that the dark ancient city was the place where Gong Gong had fallen. After learning that it was just Senki-in's guess, he could not help but curse. Senki-in was really sinister. This guy had clearly said that the location he knew was the place where Gong Gong had fallen. Even he had almost believed it. Now that he learned that it was just Senki-in's guess, it was really too much of a scam. This was why Zhuowen did not immediately rush to the Star Wars battlefield half a year later. Instead, he came to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance first. After all, Zhuowen already knew that the location was the dark ancient city, and it might not be the place where ancestral wizard Gong Gong had fallen. Therefore, Zhuowen was not very anxious. In his opinion, everyone who entered the dark ancient city did not have a clear direction, and it was still unknown whether they could find the corpse of ancestral shaman Gong Gong. The cultivators who entered early were nothing more than cannon fodder. Zhuowen and Huan Taiping chatted as they walked. From Huan Taiping, Zhuowen learned a lot about the recent happenings and developments. "We're here." Huan Taiping brought Zhuowen into Ji Wuming's cave. In the living room, Ji Wuming stood there with his hands clasped behind his back, as if he knew someone was coming for him. "Alliance Master." Zhuowen and Huan Taiping cupped their hands and saluted Ji Wuming. Ji Wuming turned around and looked at Zhuowen and Huan Taiping with a smile. "What can I do for the two of you?" "Actually, it's like this." Huan Taiping stepped forward and narrated all of Zhuowen's matters in full detail. Ji Wuming raised his eyebrows, squinted his eyes, and said coldly, "The 10 Extremes in Corpse sect is really bold. How dare they arrest an immortal master of our Pill Array Immortal Alliance?" Then, Ji Wuming's eyes fell on Zhuowen. "Immortal Master Zhuo, tell me, why do the 10 Extremes in Corpse sect want to arrest you?" "It's because of this thing." Zhuowen took out a dead flower from the macro world. This was the dead flower he had left behind for Ji Wuming to appraise. "This is..." Ji Wuming looked at the dead flower in front of him with curiosity, but soon his eyes became gloomy. "This is the dead flower, the product of the 10 Extremes in Corpse sect's inhumane experiments over the years. I have the information of the dead flower research of the 10 Extremes in Corpse sect." Then Zhuowen took out all the jade slips he had obtained from the secret underground chamber of the 10 Extremes in Corpse sect and handed them to Ji Wuming. Ji Wuming took the jade slips and glanced at them casually. His face suddenly became solemn, and he did not look very good. "Senki-in is really too much. All these years, he has been studying these unorthodox methods." Ji Wuming snorted coldly. "Alliance Master, the Dark Nether Hell is controlled by the 10 Extremities in Corpse sect. Most of the cultivators who enter there die a violent death. Then, the corpses of the dead cultivators are taken away by the 10 Extremities in Corpse sect to study the Dead Man Flower." Zhuowen cupped his hands and continued, "I think the Alliance Master should announce this matter to the world and expose the actions of the 10 Extremes in Corpse sect Master, Senki-in." Ji Wuming nodded. "Don't worry, Immortal Master Zhuo. I will deal with this matter. By the way, have you found the Underworld Soul Flower?" Zhuowen did not think much about it. He nodded slightly, took out the Underworld Soul Flower, and handed it to Ji Wuming. Ji Wuming was very satisfied with the underworld soul flower and said, "Now, I will refine the 8 sceneries soul-condensing divine pill for your confidant. By the way, Alliance Master, where is Wushang now?" Zhuan asked. "Oh, I have placed her in the pavilion in the northwest corner of the Immortal Allies. There are people there to take care of her. Don't worry," Ji Wuming said. "I hope the Alliance Master can take me to see her," Zhuan said in a deep voice. "I still need to refine the 8 sceneries soul-condensing divine pill. I will take you there when I am done," Ji Wuming said lightly. Zhuan frowned slightly and cupped his hands. "Then I will wait here for the Alliance Master to refine the 8 sceneries soul-condensing divine pill." Ji Wuming took a deep look at Zhuan and nodded. "All right, I only need half a day to refine the 8 sceneries soul-condensing divine pills. You can wait here for half a day. Taiping, you can go back first." Huan Taiping cupped his hands and said a few words to Zhuan. Then he left. Ji Wuming told Zhuan not to disturb him and went straight to the inner room to refine the pill. Zhuan silently sat cross-legged on the side, waiting for Ji Wuming. Zhuan did not tell Ji Wuming about the Yama ghost diagram. After all, it was a heaven-level divine artifact. He would not casually tell Ji Wuming about it to avoid unnecessary trouble. Half a day later, Ji Wuming came out from the inner room and said, "Master Zhua, now I will take you to see Moyan Wushang. Here is the 8 sceneries soul-condensing divine pill. Take it and give it to Moyan Wushang." Zhuan took the 8 scenery soul-condensing divine pill from Ji Wuming and felt a surge of medicinal power. On the surface of the 8 scenery soul-condensing divine pill, there were 8 different color patterns. Chapter 29:14. Dark, ancient city. The northwest corner of the pill array Immortal Alliance was a relatively remote place in the Alliance. However, in this remote northwest corner, there was a very luxurious pavilion. However, due to the fact that the northwestern corner was too remote, it was hard to see anyone there. Although this place was remote, the environment was good. There were pavilions, terraces, waterfalls, and towering trees. The moment Zhuan entered this place, he couldn't help but nod in his heart. Although this place was a little remote, the environment was to his liking. It was like a paradise. This place was chosen by Taiping. Is Master Zhua satisfied? Ji Wuming, who was standing at the head of the flying divine tool, asked when he saw the surprised look on Zhuan's face. "Although this place is a little remote, the environment is good. I'm very satisfied. Master Huan is very considerate." Zhuan nodded. Ji Wuming nodded and pointed to the pavilion in the distance. "I've placed Moyan Wushang in that pavilion. You go and feed her the 8 scenery soul-condensing divine pill." And Zhuan was surprised when he saw that Ji Wuming wanted to say something. Ji Wuming had always given him the impression that he was calm and unhurried, as if nothing could make him worry. Now, Ji Wuming's hesitation really surprised Zhuan. "Alliance Master, if you have something to say, you can tell me directly," Zhuan said in a deep voice. Ji Wuming nodded and said calmly, "Have you told anyone about the dead flower?" Zhuan was startled, but he didn't think much about it. He shook his head and said, "After I escaped from the 10 Extremes Corp sect, I've been on the run. I returned to the pill array Immortal Alliance directly. This matter is very important, so I naturally can't speak of it casually. Master Zhua, you've done well. This matter is very important, so you can't speak of it casually. Otherwise, you'll be targeted by people with ulterior motives." Ji Wuming said seriously, "Don't worry, Alliance Master. I know this. I don't know when you plan to publicize the matter of the dead flower. With your reputation, I think most of the forces in the Eastern Dao domain will believe you." Zhuan looked at Ji Wuming. The latter smiled and said, "I'll publicize this matter tomorrow. The dead flower is harmful to others. It can't be delayed for too long, and it will harm other cultivators." "Thank you, Alliance Master. I'll go in and check on Wushang first." At this moment, Zhuo Wen and Ji Wuming had arrived at the door of the pavilion. Zhuo Wen cupped his hands and opened the door to enter. Ji Wuming stood silently at the door. Looking at Zhuo Wen's back, his eyes slowly narrowed, and his expression flickered. Pavilion, pavilion, was pavilion, pavilion, was pavilion, 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 was pavilions, pavilions, pavilion, was pavilion, 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 was. At a glance, Zhuo Wen saw the crystal coffin placed in the center of the pavilion. Inside the coffin lay a beautiful woman who looked like a sleeping beauty. Zhuo Wen stepped in front of the coffin and opened the lid. He said softly, "Wushang, although I can't save you immediately, I'm thinking of a way. I'll definitely wake you up." After that, Zhuo Wen took out the 8 scenery soul concentrating god pill and fed it to Moyen of Wushang. After swallowing the 8 scenery soul consolidating divine pill, Moyen Wushang's pale face suddenly became rosy. Zhuo Wen could clearly feel that Moyen Wushang's aura was getting stronger. He was no longer as weak as before. As Zhuo Wen's consciousness scanned Moyen Wushang's soul, the loose soul in his body had become a lot more solid. This was just the 8 scenery soul condensing divine pill, and there was already such a significant effect. If Moyen of Wushang completely absorbed the effects of the pill, the effect would be even better. Seeing that Moyen of Wushang's complexion was getting better and better, Zhuo Wen's heart was completely relieved. He knew that after Moyen of Wushang absorbed the 8 scenery soul condensing divine pill, his soul would become extremely solid. Even if he slept for 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even longer, his soul would not naturally collapse. Because the only thing Zhuo Wen had to do was to help Moyen of Wushang recover the missing 6 desires on the soul level. And to do this, he had to refine the 6 desires soul condensing divine pill. After thinking that the 6 desires soul condensing divine pill was a heaven-level divine pill, Zhuo Wen felt a little bitter, but he was not discouraged. He knew that it was basically impossible for him to refine the 6 desires soul condensing divine pill now, but he believed that it was not impossible for him to refine it in the future. Of course, his primary goal now was to find the 6 heaven-level main ingredients for the 6 desires soul condensing divine pill. After Moyen of Wushang's soul had completely stabilized, Zhuo Wen felt relieved and put Moyen of Wushang back into the great world. Walking out of the pavilion, Zhuo Wen looked at Ji Wuming and asked, "Alliance Master, I want to ask if you have heard of the 1,000-year flowerless eyes, red cloud, green sun, red, blazing phoenix, exquisite leaf, Buddha yellow water bamboo, 3 realms flower chinyu, and red moon star wave milk." Ji Wuming looked at Zhuo Wen as if he had seen a ghost and said, "These 6 heaven-level divine pills are rare in the world. Immortal Master Zhuo, why are you asking about these 6 heaven-level divine pills?" "I want to find these 6 heaven-level divine pills. This is the key to whether or not Wushang can recover his 6 desires," Zhuo Wen said firmly. Ji Wuming's expression was complicated. He pondered for a moment and said, "We don't have any heaven-grade elixirs in the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, but we definitely have some in the Pill Array Dao domain. However, there won't be many of them. Even a true heaven-grade alchemist rarely uses heaven-grade elixirs because there are too few of them. Only in the Pill Array Dao domain." Zhuo Wen asked with a frown. "Heavenly divine medicines have appeared in the starry sky battlefield before. However, each time they appear, it will cause a bloodbath. There will be a great war, and many experts will try to snatch them. With your current strength, even if such a heaven-level divine pill appears in the star battlefield, it will be difficult for you to snatch it." Ji Wuming shook his head. Zhuowen didn't answer Ji Wuming's question. Instead, he asked, "Does the Dark Ancient City also have heaven-level divine pills?" Ji Wuming was startled and immediately nodded. The Dark Ancient City is one of the most dangerous places in the star battlefield. The chances of heaven-level divine pills appearing here are even higher. Maybe one or more of the 6 heaven-level divine pills you want can be found there. Thank you for your advice. I'm going to the Dark Ancient City in the star battlefield. Can you give me a star map of the star battlefield? Zhuowen cupped his fists. Chapter 29:15. Calculated Killing Intent. The reason why the astral battlefield was such a crucial place was because of its special geographical location. It was located at the border between the Xianmi heavenly domain and the primitive heavenly domain. In other words, if a Tao-confirming cultivator flew from the astral battlefield, it would only take a few months to reach the primitive heavenly domain from the Xianmi heavenly domain, or from the primitive heavenly domain to the Xianmi heavenly domain. Because of this special geographical location, the astral battlefield had always been in a terrible state of war since its formation. Both the alien races of the primitive heavenly domain and the cultivators of the Xianmi heavenly domain wanted to invade each other's territory, so the two heavenly domains fought each other all year round, resulting in countless casualties. Moreover, the astral battlefield was an unprecedented treasure land. Countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures had appeared in it. Many cultivators and alien races had obtained the treasures by luck and become experts, becoming legends for a time. As such rumors spread, more and more people became jealous and went to the astral battlefield to take risks, hoping to obtain great benefits there. The chances of a heaven-reaching divine herb appearing in such a treasure land were much higher than in other places. Ji Wuming looked deeply at Zhuowen and said, "I think you already know that ancestor sorcerer Gonggong died in the Dark Ancient City, so you want to enter the Dark Ancient City to try your luck? You have to think carefully. The Dark Ancient City is much more dangerous than the ordinary areas of the astral battlefield. Even an expert like Senki Yin wouldn't dare to enter the depths of the Dark Ancient City alone." Zhuowen cupped his fists and said, "I know what I'm doing. I hope Alliance Master can give me a map of the astral battlefield." Ji Wuming saw that Zhuowen had made up his mind, so he didn't say anything more. He simply handed a jade slip to Zhuowen and said, "This is the map of the astral battlefield. Because of the special nature of the astral battlefield, it is impossible to build a transmission array in that area. If you want to enter the astral battlefield, you must use a flying divine tool." Zhuowen took the jade slip, browsed it, and thanked Ji Wuming with cupped fists. Zhuowen and Ji Wuming chatted for a while before leaving the pill array Immortal Alliance. Ji Wuming silently looked at Zhuowen's back as he left. Behind him, Huan Taiping slowly walked out and said with a complicated look in his eyes, "Alliance Master, I really didn't expect Immortal Master Zhua to be able to find the Dead Flower's secret laboratory in the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect. This matter is of great importance. If Immortal Master Zhua finds out about this, I'm afraid it will be troublesome." Ji Wuming sighed. "I can only say that Master Zhua is too lucky to have run into the Dead Flower. However, the Dead Flower is the result of many years of joint research between me and Senki Yin. We can't let it go to waste because of him." Huan Taiping's gaze flickered, and he said, "Alliance Head, are you really going to make a move against Immortal Master Zhua? After all, he's already an immortal master of our Immortal Alliance, and he's also the best candidate for the qualifier 200 years later." Ji Wuming interrupted Huan Taiping and said, "There are still 200 years before the qualifier. During this time, we can find a more talented young alchemist than Zhuowen. However, the Dead Flower can only be used once. If it fails, my efforts will be ruined, and I'll be cursed by countless people. What do you think I should do?" Ji Wuming's eyes were sharp as he coldly looked at Huan Taiping beside him. The latter lowered his head, not daring to refute Ji Wuming. It was indeed, as Ji Wuming had said. If he had to choose between the research of the dead flower and a talented junior, he would naturally choose the former. "Alliance Master, how do you plan to deal with Zhuowen?" Huan Taiping whispered, "I've already contacted the Blood Prison 7 killers. 3 of them are willing to help." Ji Wuming said indifferently. Huan Taiping's pupils shrank. The Blood Prison 7 killers were the titles of the 7 high-ranking members of the Blood Prison organization. The Blood Prison 7 killers had assassinated countless experts over the years and created a great reputation for themselves. The weakest of the Blood Prison 7 killers was an early-stage Lord of Creation, while the strongest was a mid-stage Lord of Creation. Moreover, the Blood Prison 7 killers' battle prowess basically surpassed experts of the same level. Moreover, because they specialized in assassination and concealment techniques, each of them had killed experts of the same level or even a high-grade expert. This was also why the Blood Prison was so famous even among Dao Palace-level factions, even though it was only a Dao Palace-level faction. Whenever the Blood Prison was mentioned, it gave people the impression of being mysterious and powerful. 3 of them are willing to help. Huan Taiping shook his head inwardly. He knew that if the Blood Prison 7 killers took action, Zhuowen would undoubtedly die. Huan Taiping had indeed seen Zhuowen's strength before. It was indeed not bad, but it was still a little far from the Blood Prison 7 killers. Moreover, the Blood Prison 7 killers were best at sneak attacks and assassinations. Moreover, 3 of them had attacked together. He really couldn't think of a reason why Zhuowen could escape their pursuit. "I originally thought that Immortal Master Zhua and I would always be good partners. Now, it seems like it was just wishful thinking. Immortal Master Zhua took a wrong step, so every step was wrong." Huan Taiping shook his head and thought to himself. Zhuowen sat cross-legged on the space-time roulette and rapidly streaked across the starry sky. He had already left the Pill Array Immortal Alliance for more than half a month. When he opened the map that Ji Wuming had given him again, he discovered that he would soon arrive at the Star Wars battlefield. With his current speed, he would be able to enter the Star Wars battlefield in 4 or 5 days. However, the closer he got to the Star Wars battlefield, the more uneasy Zhuowen felt. Zhuowen felt that something was wrong. He had cultivated to the point where he knew his destiny. Thus, he felt an inexplicable sense of unease in his heart. Something was definitely about to happen. Zhuowen pointed his right hand's 5 fingers and started to use the heavenly divination art. A mysterious energy spread out from his right hand's 5 fingers. This mysterious energy formed a pair of transparent void eyes above his head. Zhuowen knew that this was the manifestation of the heavenly divination art. It could see through falsehood and predict good and bad luck. Zhuowen saw a bloody light through the heavenly divination eye. His expression turned ugly. He knew that something ominous was waiting for him on the road ahead. Putting away the void eyes, Zhuowen's face turned slightly pale. However, his eyes were filled with indifference. He muttered in a low voice, 3 days later, a great killing intent will descend. It seems like I have to be prepared. Zhuowen didn't continue using the heavenly divination art. After all, the heavenly divination art wasn't without a price. The more he divined, the more his lifespan would be consumed. Chapter 29:16. Blood Prison 7 killers 3 days later. The boundary of the astral battlefield appeared in the distance. The boundary of the astral battlefield was very different from the boundary of the other forces in the Xian Mi heavenly domain. The other boundary emitted gentle starlight. However, the boundary of the astral battlefield was filled with blood-red light and a murderous aura. It was accompanied by foul resentment. From afar, the boundary of the astral battlefield looked like a vicious hell. A streak of light rapidly flew toward the boundary of the astral battlefield. However, tens of thousands of kilometers away from the boundary of the astral battlefield, 3 murderous auras instantly locked onto the streak of light. Immediately after, 3 terrifying attacks erupted and blasted into the streak of light. Rumble! There was a thunderous explosion. The streak of light didn't even have time to react before it was blasted into dust by the 3 terrifying attacks. He can't even withstand a single blow. I thought he would be some powerful expert. He was actually annihilated just like that. He's a little too weak. Big Brother is making a mountain out of a molehill by sending the 3 of us. From the information, this kid has a deep grudge with our blood prison. Back then, he killed many of our blood prison assassins. Although they were only low-level assassins, he still killed our people. 3 voices, neither yin nor yang, came from not far away from the sound of self-detonation. These were 3 men completely covered in blood-red robes. The 3 of them were wearing the same clothes. The only difference was the weapons in their hands and the insignia on the sleeves of their robes. The man in blood-red robes, holding a blood-red sword, had the ancient number 7 written on his sleeve. The man with the blood-red halberd had the ancient number 6 written on his sleeve. The man in blood-red robes with the strongest aura among the 3 wore blood-red gloves. The ancient number 5 was written on his sleeve. These 3 were none other than 5th killer, 6th killer, and 7th killer of the blood prison's 7 killers. 6th killer and 7th killer were both at the early stage of the God of Creation stage, while 5th killer was at the mid-stage of the God of Creation stage. Generally speaking, anyone who could make the 3 of them work together was usually someone important or a high-level expert of a Tao Palace faction. Now, the 3 killers had completely annihilated their target. The process was so simple that there was no process at all. The 3 killers couldn't help but grumble. They felt that they had used a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Are you blood prison assassins? Suddenly, just as the 3 assassins were complaining, an unfriendly voice came from nearby. The 3 killers who were originally complaining all turned their heads and looked at the young man, who was slowly walking over from behind. Their eyes narrowed. It's the target. He's not dead. 7 kills said in surprise. 5 kills and 6 kills were also shocked, since their target was still alive. Who was the one who had attacked them? There's no need to be surprised. What you killed just now was merely a puppet that I created in advance. However, the appearance and aura of that puppet were very similar to mine. If you didn't look carefully, it would be very difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. Zhuowen's voice was calm, but his eyes were filled with killing intent. It was not the first time that the blood prison assassins had provoked him. They had done it several times, and the assassins they sent were stronger each time. They really wanted to kill him. Furthermore, they had sent 3 God of Creation assassins. If Zhuowen had not known beforehand and had been ambushed by the 3 God of Creation assassins who had been lying in ambush in advance, Zhuowen knew that he would definitely have been injured, and the injuries would not be light. However, what Zhuowen did not understand was that from the way the 3 assassins attacked, it seemed that they had known that their target would pass through this path. Could it be that the blood prison had foreseen that Zhuowen would definitely come to the astral battlefield during this period of time, and would definitely pass through this path? Oh, it seems that we've been tricked. You're really not ordinary. 5 kills looked at Zhuowen with interest. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Although their assassination plan had failed, it did not matter because the aura of the young man in front of them was very weak. He was only the Lord of Mystery. His cultivation was too low. Even 7 kills, who was the weakest among them, could easily kill him, let alone escape from their hands. It was precisely because the opponent was too weak that 5 kills did not take him seriously. However, what I admire more is your courage. Since you knew that we were ambushing you, shouldn't you have fled in panic? You actually dared to appear in front of us? 5 kills cocked his head to the side and said mockingly. Zhuowen's gaze was calm, and he said indifferently, "The reason I appeared in front of you is because you've angered me. The consequences are very severe." Ha ha, how laughable. Even a piece of trash like the Lord of Mystery has a temper. Don't say that I angered you. You should be honored that I killed you. 7 kills' eyes flashed coldly, and his words were very presumptuous. Who hired you to kill me? Zhuowen did not pay attention to 7 kills' words. Instead, he continued to ask questions. Looks like there's something wrong with your brain. You actually want to ask about your employer's information. Although you're about to die under my sword, I don't plan on letting you die as a ghost. It's better for you to die like this and slowly ask the King of Hell about it. 7 kills licked his lips. In the end, he could not hold back anymore and brazenly attacked. He held the blood-red sword with both hands and swung it in a mysterious trajectory. The blood-red light soared into the sky, and it was terrifying, as if the sky and earth were falling apart. The moment the blood-red light shone on him, Zhuowen felt a huge pressure on his body, as if a huge mountain was pressing down on him. However, this pressure was nothing to Zhuowen, who had cultivated the Pangu's sacred body. He only needed to circulate the power of the Pangu's sacred body in his body to completely offset this huge pressure. However, Zhuowen's performance was not like that. His face was pale, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. It was as if he was enduring a huge amount of pressure. When 7 kills saw Zhuowen's reluctant look, his eyes were full of pride. He knew that the gap between him and this person was too big. It seemed that this person could not even withstand the aura that he was emitting. How could he fight with him? How boring. I thought that you would be stronger than the average Lord of Mystery and could play with me a little longer. Now, it seems that you're a complete piece of trash. You're completely useless. 7 kills laughed loudly, and his attack had already landed on Zhuowen's body. It had to be said that 7 kills was indeed very insidious. He slashed at Zhuowen's forehead with one sword, and at Zhuowen's crotch with the other sword, because they were slashing at the same time, and the speed was just right. However, Zhuo Wenming could only block one part of his body. If he blocked the space between his eyebrows, he would be able to preserve his life. However, his manly aura would disappear completely. If he blocked his crotch, Zhuo Wenming would also be gone. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. This 7 kills was really arrogant. He wanted to use this method to tease and humiliate him. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 sword lights swept out from behind Zhuowen. The blood immortal sword and the sacrifice of death sword instantly blocked 7 kills 2 swords. The blood immortal sword and the sacrifice of death sword had made great progress. With the help of the sword tomb and many ores and materials, they had both become eternal-level divine weapons. It was more than enough to block 7 kills casual attack. The moment they blocked 7 kills attack, another sword light swept out from behind Zhuowen. With the terrifying power of thunder and fire, it instantly swept to the bottom of 7 kills' feet. Then, from bottom to top, it rushed into 7 kills' crotch. Chapter 29:17. Zhan San Sha. There was a blood-curdling scream. Lu Sha sneered and said indifferently, "He is indeed a good-for-nothing. It seems that 7th brother is in a hurry to kill this boy. Judging from the intensity of the scream, this boy is probably..." When Lu Sha finished speaking, his eyes fell on the battle. Immediately, the corners of his eyes twitched, and his face stiffened. This was because the scream did not come from the young man he thought it was, but from 7 kills, who he was full of confidence in. Sixth brother, what are you waiting for? Attack with me. This boy is really not simple. He is not weak. Seventh brother, you are too careless. 5 kills was the first to react. He took a step forward and said to Lu Sha. Then, he disappeared as if he had teleported. After 6 kills came to his senses, he let out a roar and followed 5 kills to attack. The boy, who was just an ant in his eyes, suddenly exploded and kicked his 7th brother's manhood. This was a slap in the face for them. Lu Sha was very angry. Naturally, he wanted to kill Zhuowen to vent his anger. Little bastard, how dare you use a dirty trick? 7 kills covered his crotch with both hands and quickly retreated. Snot and tears flowed down his face. Even at his level of cultivation, that part of his body was extremely fragile. Moreover, the Thunder Fire Sword was now at the peak of the eternal level. When 7 kills was unprepared, his manhood would have been broken no matter how hard it was. After 7 kills quickly got used to the pain, he roared and attacked the Thunder Fire Sword with all his strength. Unfortunately, Xiao He was very cunning. The moment he attacked, he had already thought of a way to retreat. He just happened to dodge 7 kills' attack. 7 kills was mad. When he saw Xiao He retreating, he ignored Xiao He and chased after Xiao He. His manhood was shattered by the hateful divine sword. He knew that even if he repaired it with divine power, it would not be as good as before. All of this was caused by this abominable divine sword. He wanted to capture this divine sword and extract the artifact spirit within it. Then, he would use the divine fire to incinerate it, making it suffer the pain of being incinerated by the divine fire for eternity. Zhuowen had already arrived in front of 7 kills. His whole body was shining with crystal light. He struck out with both hands and performed the tyrannical art of slaughtering Tao. It was as if he had become a fighting machine. Scram! 7 kills' eyes were red. He slapped Zhuowen. Clearly, he did not care about Zhuowen at all. All he cared about was the Thunder Fire Sword. Zhuowen sneered inwardly. He formed a palm with his right hand and abruptly struck out, shattering Qisha's palm. Then, his left hand ruthlessly struck Qisha's face. The terrifying power sent 7 kills flying. Countless cracks appeared on his head. Qisha was in a daze. His eyes rolled back, and he was delirious. Zhuowen took a step forward, wanting to give Qisha the final blow. Unfortunately, 5 kills and 6 kills had already arrived. 6 kills was holding a huge blood halberd. He threw the halberd in the air. The blood halberd was extremely fast. It turned into a terrifying blood light in the air and quickly landed in front of Zhuowen's chest. 6 kills was much stronger than 7 kills. The power of the blood halberd thrown with all his strength was also very terrifying. Of course, 6 kills was quite satisfied with this attack. In his opinion, the blood halberd flying in the air would definitely injure the young man severely. Boom! Zhuowen's right foot stomped on the air, causing a terrifying explosive sound to erupt. Shortly after, his right palm borrowed the force of his right foot to fiercely slap the body of the blood halberd. A terrifying force swept out, forming circle after circle of terrifying air waves. Then, 6 kills was stunned to find that the blood halberd he threw with all his strength had been knocked away by the young man's palm. Moreover, there were traces of cracks on the surface of the blood halberd. What kind of power did this require to make the blood halberd, which was a half-step Genesis divine artifact, crack? This was unbelievable. The moment Zhuowen blasted away the blood halberd, 5 kills had already arrived. 5 kills throughout an exquisite fist technique. after a set of fist techniques. The energy of the entire starry sky seemed to gather around 5 kills. It was as if Zhuowen was not facing a person, but a huge star. Zhuowen sneered in his heart. His 5 fingers clenched into fists. He also punched 5 kills fists violently. He cultivated the Pangu's sacred body, so he was not afraid of this kind of violent collision. Under this starry sky, no race's physical strength could compare with Panga's. After dozens of punches, in an instant, 5 kills grunted and retreated hundreds of steps. Both of his fists were badly mangled, and his fists were trembling nonstop. On the other hand, Zhuowen's fists were crystal clear, as if they were carved out of the most perfect jade in the world. Under the attack, just now, Zhuowen's fists were not damaged at all. How is this possible? 5 kills, eyes were glazed. This fist technique was passed down from his ancestors. It was a fist technique that followed the path of the heavenly Tao. Its power was terrifying. It was because of this fist technique that 5 kills was much stronger than other cultivators of the same level. Moreover, his assassination ability was much weaker than his direct attack ability. All of this was because of this fist technique. But now, this fist technique that had always been successful was simply trash in front of Zhuowen. Zhuowen did not even use any fist technique. His attacks were not fancy at all. They were just casual punches. You're too weak. Zhuowen's eyes were calm. He took a step forward and continued to rush toward 5 kills. He still punched without any fancy moves. 5 kills was irritated by Zhuowen's words. He exerted his fist technique to the extreme. It seemed to have transcended time and space. Its power was many times stronger than before. You've improved a little. Zhuowen punched out. He was evenly matched with 5 kills. His eyes were full of surprise. 5 kills' face was gloomy. He shouted, "Sixth brother, what are you waiting for? Come and finish this guy together." 6 kills was not far away. He had already put away his blood halberd. He was shocked to see 5 kills being suppressed by Zhuowen. He knew 5 kills' strength very well. He knew that 5 kills cultivation was only 1 level higher than his, but his actual strength was more than 1 level higher than his. But now, 5 kills, who was very powerful in his heart, was easily defeated by Zhuowen. Naturally, he felt very unbalanced. Now that 5 kills had spoken, he naturally could not continue to watch the show. He roared and rushed forward. The blood halberd in his hand danced, and countless blood halberd shadows appeared, surrounding Zhuowen. Zhuowen did not care about the halberd shadows at all. Instead, his whole body shone brightly, and he attacked 5 kills. Chapter 29:18. Doubt. How dare you ignore my attacks? Seeing that Zhuowen completely ignored his attacks, 6 kills' face suddenly darkened. Obviously, Zhuowen's disregard was the greatest contempt for him. But soon, a cruel look appeared in his eyes. His attacks might not be as strong as 5 kills, but if he wanted to resist without defending, he would have to pay a terrible price. Bang! Countless halberd silhouettes landed on Zhuowen's body, causing Zhuowen's charging figure to stagger. His speed slowed down as the halberd silhouettes left white marks on his body. But that was all. After Zhuowen withstood this wave of halberd attacks, he did not slow down and rushed toward 5 kills again. 6 kills was stunned. His attacks only left white marks on Yi Futian's body. They could not even cause a wound. This was too shocking. Bang! 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 Zhuowen collided with 5 kills again. The power of the peak 5-star Pangu's sacred body burst out without reservation. He also used the tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique to the extreme, making him look like a terrifying fighting machine. The more 5 kills fought, the more frightened he became. The injuries on his body also became more and more terrifying. He began to feel fear. At this moment, Zhuo was like a towering mountain sitting in front of him, making him feel like he was being pressured and suffocated. At the same time, he cursed his employer in his heart. He had seriously underestimated the strength of the target. If he had known that the target was so terrifying, he would have needed at least one of the top 3 of 7 kills to cooperate with them. To be honest, their lineup was not enough for this person. 5 kills only felt pain in his right arm. Then he found that his right arm had been torn off by Zhuo. The intense pain made him scream involuntarily. 5 kills was really scared. He began to retreat, but soon found that he had no way out. He had been completely locked on by the young man in front of him. He could only fight. Running away would only make him die faster. Let's fight. After finding that there was no way out, 5 kills went all out and began to fight Zhuo to the death. I've played enough with you. I'm not playing anymore. Zhuo smiled faintly. Then his right hand formed into a blade and formed a mysterious trajectory in the air. He suddenly slashed out, and a white blade of air that reached the heavens, and the earth shot out. Its surface emitted an aura that transcended the way of the heavens. 5 kills screamed. In front of this white chi blade, he was like an insignificant ant. He tried his best to 6 kills. In the end, he could only watch as his body was split into 2 halves by the white blade of air. His spirit was also split into 2 halves, and his consciousness completely dissipated. The moment 6 kills saw 5 kills being killed, he immediately used an escape technique to retreat. But unfortunately, Zhuo had already had eyes on him. He translation the moment 6 kills, 6 kills, translation. 6 kills, S translation. And 6 kills, 6 kills, 6 kill. 6 kills looked at the young man with a hideous smile in front of him and felt a chill in his heart. He wanted to beg for mercy, but he found that his head had been separated from his body. It turned out that Zhuo had used the sky-splitting blade to cut off 6 kills' head. After 5 kills and 6 kills were completely killed, 7 kills, who had just woken up, happened to see 5 kills and 6 kills die. He trembled all over and knelt down. My lord, we failed to recognize Mount Tai and offended you. Please be magnanimous and spare my lowly life. 7 kills trembled, and his voice became a little shrill. Zhuo silently looked at 7 kills, who was begging for mercy. He was speechless. Compared to 6 kills and 5 kills, 7 kills was obviously more righteous. To put it bluntly, 7 kills was the most spineless of the 3. It's not like I can't spare your lowly life. Tell me, who is your employer? Zhuo asked indifferently. Employer? 7 kills looked uncertain. He could only say helplessly, My lord, this mission is very secret. It was issued by our big brother. He didn't disclose the employer's information, so we don't know who the employer is. Oh, the big brother you speak of is 1 kill of the blood prison's 7 kills, right? Zhuo said indifferently. Zhuo had also heard of the blood prison's 7 kills. He knew that the 7 kills were the management of the blood prison and were the 7 most terrifying assassins in the blood prison. The 3 assassins who came to kill him this time were the weakest of the 7 kills. The strongest should be 1 kill, who was also the most mysterious and powerful of the 7 kills. 7 kills quickly nodded, a flattering smile on his face. In that case, I'd like to ask you, how did the 3 of you know in advance that I was going to pass by here and ambush me in advance? Zhuo stared at 7 kills, his body suddenly releasing a powerful aura. His expression was very unfriendly. 7 kills trembled. He could feel the killing intent in Zhuo's eyes. He had no doubt that if he dared to lie, the latter would kill him with thunderous means. 7 kills hesitated for a moment and said, somewhat timidly, I'm not too sure about this. It was our boss who gave us the location and told us to ambush you here in advance. In other words, the person who knew in advance that I would pass by here was the employer? Zhuowen said. 7 kills was silent. This matter was already very obvious. 1 kill was the leader of the blood prison and had never met Zhuowen. It was certainly impossible for him to know in advance about Zhuowen's route. Only the employer who hired the blood prison to kill him would provide such information. And this employer was definitely someone Zhuowen knew. Zhuowen could not help but think of a figure in his mind. The news of him going to the Star Battlefield this time was only known to the Alliance Master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, Ji Wuming and Huan Taiping. Moreover, the Star Battlefield star map was also given to him by Ji Wuming. If there was anyone who knew his route the best, it would be Ji Wuming. However, Zhuowen was very surprised by his guess. At the same time, he found it inconceivable. Ji Wuming valued him very much and had even given him the position of an immortal master. He had even entrusted the Pill Array Dao Domain's qualifiers 200 years later to him. He really could not figure out why Ji Wuming, who valued him so much, would hire the blood prison to kill him. What was his motive? Thinking of this, Zhuowen felt a little irritable and uneasy, although Zhuowen's mind was full of doubts, and he had the urge to return to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance directly. He knew that it was not appropriate to go back now. Moreover, he had already arrived at the Star Battlefield. There was no need to go back just to ask such a question. He knew very well that even if this matter was not ordered by Ji Wuming, the answer he would get would be negative. Use the divine divination technique to calculate Ji Wuming first. Chapter 29:19. Starry sky camped the moment the eye of nothingness condensed. Zhuowen's face became even paler. He could clearly feel that his lifespan was rapidly slipping away. The most direct manifestation of this was that his body became extremely weak at this moment, as if he was suffering from a serious illness. Puchi, Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood, but his expression was very ugly. Using the art of divine calculation twice in such a short period of time was too much of a burden on him. It even forced him to suffer from serious internal injuries. The person who hired the blood prison assassins to assassinate me was indeed Ji Wuming. Why did he do this? Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. He could see from the eye of nothingness that the person who hired the assassins was Ji Wuming, the leader of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Could it be the dead flower? Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He remembered that when he gave all the information about the dead flower to Ji Wuming, the latter did not immediately announce it to the world. Instead, he changed the topic. At that time, Zhuowen did not pay much attention to it. Now that he thought about it, Ji Wuming's previous behavior was indeed a little abnormal. It seems that I can't go back to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Zhuowen sighed. He was a little depressed. He had just become an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, but he had already fallen out with the Alliance and became a rogue cultivator without anyone to rely on. Moreover, he couldn't talk about the dead flower now. Who knew how many forces were involved in the research of the dead flower? Perhaps if he let it slip, it would lead to a disaster. Then, the losses would outweigh the gains. Moreover, he had given all the information about the dead flower to Ji Wuming. Without this information, he could only talk about it verbally without any evidence. At that time, he would bring a lot of trouble. Let's go to the Dark Ancient City first. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He planned to explore the Dark Ancient City first. His current strength was still too low. Even with the Yama ghost diagram, his strength was at most comparable to an ordinary creator. If his Panga's sacred body could reach the 6-star level, he might not be able to defeat Sun Qiyin, the Lord of Tongtian. However, it would not be easy for Senki Yin to kill him. By then, Zhuowen would have the ability to protect himself in the host region to a certain extent. Therefore, if the corpse of ancestral shaman Gonggong really existed in the Dark Ancient City, then he must find the goo worm in Gonggong's body. After fusing with the Gonggong goo, Zhuowen believed that he had a chance to break through to the six-star realm. The space within the astral battlefield was vast. The stars that floated within it were all suffused with a blood-red glow, giving off a bloodthirsty glow. The Star Wars battlefield was divided into 4 regions. These 4 regions were under the charge of the Xianmi Heavenly Region's 4 great Dao domains. Zhuowen had entered the encampment of the Star Wars battlefield that the host region was in charge of. It was called the Eastern Space Camp. Zhuowen remembered that this Star Wars battlefield was the most important place in the Xianmi Heavenly Domain. It was said that the Dao Lords of the 4 Dao domains were stationed in the 4 camps of the Star Wars battlefield all year round. The so-called Dao Lord of each Dao domain was the person in charge of each Dao domain. He was also the strongest person in each Dao domain. He was the person with the highest authority in charge of all the forces in the entire Dao domain. Even the Dao Palace level forces in the Dao domain had to listen to the orders of the Dao Lord. This was because the Dao Lord represented the master of the entire Dao domain. He was a supreme existence. Originally, the 4 Dao Lords were not stationed in the Star Wars battlefield a long time ago. Instead, they stayed in their respective Dao domains and were in charge of the forces in their respective Dao domains. However, tens of thousands of years ago, the foreign races from the primitive heavenly region invaded the Xianmi heavenly region on a large scale. Nearly half of the 10 great races of the primitive heavenly region were mobilized. Moreover, the leaders of each race had participated in this battle. That battle was very tragic. The Xianmi heavenly region's Star Wars camp was almost attacked. In the end, the 4 Dao Lords joined forces and barely managed to repel the foreign races from the primitive heavenly region. They managed to protect the Xianmi heavenly region's Star Wars camp. Moreover, after that tragic lesson, the 4 Dao Lords decided to stay in the Star Wars camp all year round. Unless something major happened in their Dao domains, they would not leave the Star Wars battlefield easily. Zhuowen had learned about the 4 Dao Lords from Ghost Plume. It was said that the Eastern Dao Lord who guarded the Eastern Star Wars camp was called Tan Xinghua. He was a powerful expert with great talent and bold vision. His strength was at least at the peak of the early-stage heaven-reaching master realm. After so many years, Ghost Plume guessed that Tan Xinghua should have broken through and reached the mid-stage heaven-reaching master realm. At this moment, 3 figures appeared at the entrance of the Eastern Star Wars camp. The person in the lead was a young man with 2 scars on his face. This young man was Zhuowen in disguise. Of course, his current name was still Ma Yujia. The 2 people following behind Zhuowen were one old and one young. They were naturally Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia. At this moment, Ghost Plume was following behind Zhuowen in a daze. Zhuowen had indeed promised not to kill him, but he had extracted a strand of his soul and forced him to become Zhuowen's slave. His life and death were in Zhuowen's hands. The entrance to the Eastern Star Wars camp was a huge, hollow bronze door. The bronze door was covered in a coppery green color and looked unremarkable. However, the vicissitudes and heaviness that were faintly emitted from it made it obvious at a glance that this bronze door was definitely not an ordinary object. Moreover, it was very old and ancient. The guards guarding the 2 sides of the bronze door were only Heaven Dao Lords. However, Zhuowen could sense the austere aura coming from these 2 guards. Only those who had experienced countless massacres would have such an austere aura. Zhuowen had no doubt that although these 2 guards were only Heaven Dao Lords, ordinary Heaven Dao lords were no match for these two guards in a real battle. Which sect do the three of you come from? When Zhuowen led Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia through the entrance, the two guards stopped the three of them and asked calmly, "We don't belong to any sect. We are itinerant cultivators." Zhuowen replied, "Since you are itinerant cultivators, each of you has to pay 10 high-grade Heaven Dao crystals." The guard said. Zhuowen revealed a surprised expression and asked in return, "Do you mean that cultivators who belong to sects don't have to pay?" Yin Wuxia pulled Zhuowen and whispered, "Master, these are the rules. Itinerant cultivators who don't belong to any sect have to pay 10 high-grade Heaven Dao crystals. On the other hand, Dao Order disciples have to pay 5 high-grade Heavenly Dao crystals, while Dao Palace disciples only have to pay 3 high-grade Heavenly Dao crystals. On the other hand, Dao Palace disciples don't have to pay any Heavenly Dao crystals." Zhuowen was surprised. He didn't expect the Star Wars camp to have such a rule. After handing over 30 high-grade Heaven Path crystals, the three of them were able to enter the universal campsite smoothly. After entering, Zhuowen realized that he seemed to have entered another world. It was obvious that the Star Wars camp's exterior was set up with a very powerful array formation. Only when one truly entered the Star Wars camp could they see the true appearance of the Star Wars camp. Chapter 29:20. Starry Sky Tower. The tower was very tall, at least several thousand feet tall. The surface of the tower emitted a crystal-clear light, revealing an ancient and mysterious aura. Ghost Plume was quite good at reading people's expressions. When he saw Zhuowen staring at the tower in the distance after entering the camp, he quickly introduced it to Zhuowen. "Master, this tower is called the Starry Sky Tower. It's the core building of the Starry Sky Camp, and also the symbol of the Starry Sky Camp." Zhuowen couldn't help but look at Ghost Plume and asked doubtfully, "I don't think this tower is located in the Eastern Starry Sky Camp." "It's like this. This tower is located in the center of the 4 camps, and not in the Eastern Starry Sky Camp," Ghost Plume replied. "Then what is the main purpose of this Starry Sky Tower?" Zhuowen asked. "Its main purpose is to record the achievements of cultivators in the Starry Sky battlefield. For example, the more foreign races a cultivator kills in the Starry Sky battlefield, and the stronger they are, the more points they will receive. Moreover, the higher the points, the more valuable the treasures you can exchange for in the Starry Sky Tower. It's said that as long as you have enough points, you can even exchange for heaven-piercing godly medicines and divine artifacts. Heaven-piercing godly medicines and divine artifacts can be exchanged." Zhuowen's pupils shrank as he asked excitedly, "I heard this rumor from somewhere else, so I'm not too sure. The points required to exchange for heaven-piercing godly medicines are simply too high. It seems that no one has ever been qualified to exchange for heaven-piercing godly medicines and divine artifacts of that level," Ghost Plume said with uncertainty. Zhuowen was very excited. He knew that this rumor wasn't baseless. In other words, within the Starry Sky Tower's exchange system, there must be heaven-piercing godly medicines of that level. Let's go. Let's go take a look at the Starry Sky Tower." Zhuowen waved his hand and led Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia towards the Starry Sky Tower in the distance. Along the way, Zhuowen noticed that there weren't many cultivators in the Starry Sky Camp. In fact, it was a little sparse. Even if they met a small group of cultivators along the way, most of them were talking about the Dark Ancient City. From the discussions he heard along the way, Zhuowen found out that most of the cultivators in the Universal Camp had gone to the Dark Ancient City. More than a month ago, Senki Yin announced that Gonggong's death was in the Dark Ancient City. Therefore, it attracted the majority of cultivators to explore the Dark Ancient City. This was also the main reason why there were so few people in the camp. When he arrived in front of the Starry Sky Tower, Zhuowen discovered how majestic and tall the starry sky tower was. Moreover, the aura emitted from the surface of the starry sky tower made his heart throb. He felt that this energy was very mysterious. There were clearly more cultivators around the starry sky tower. At the bottom of the starry sky tower, there was a door that led to the inside of the starry sky tower. Many cultivators were coming in and out of that door. Apart from that, what attracted Zhuowen's attention the most was the starry sky plaza in front of the starry sky tower. There was a huge stone tablet on the plaza. The surface of the stone tablet was crystal clear and sparkled with starlight. It looked as if it was formed purely by starlight. It was very strange. At the top of the stone tablet was a huge standard seal script engraved with the words Starry Sky Contribution Ranking. On the surface of the Starry Sky Contribution Ranking, there were names recorded. These names were arranged in order from top to bottom. The most conspicuous names on the Starry Sky Contribution Ranking were naturally the top 3 names. Not only were the fonts much larger than the others, but the fonts of the top 3 names also emitted bright starlight, like the brightest stars in the night sky. The top 3 names were Zhongli Haoyan, Yi Qidong, and Yi Hanfei. Among these 3 names, Zhuowen was very familiar with Yi Qidong, who was ranked 2nd. He was the number 1 monster in the host region. Zhuowen had met him a few times at the Blue Moon Lake, the cave abode of the 10 extremities Incorpse Sex Ghost Plume. Zhuowen had learned about the Starry Sky Contribution ranking from Ghost Plume. It was ranked according to the contribution of the younger generation that participated in the Starry Sky battlefield. The contribution was directly reflected in the number of points a cultivator had. The more points they had, the higher their ranking. The number 1 on the Starry Sky Contribution ranking, Zhongli Haoyan, had a string of numbers behind her name. This string of numbers was the number of points Zhongli Haoyan had obtained in the Starry Sky battlefield. Zhongli Haoyan had obtained a total of 253,900 points. She was almost 100,000 points higher than the 2nd place Yi Qidong, who only had 150,000 points. The 3rd place Yi Hanfei had around 120,000 points. The difference between him and Yi Qidong wasn't that big. Outside of the top 3, the top 10 cultivators had around 50,000 to 100,000 points. As for those ranked between 10th and 20th, they would have around 50,000 to 30,000 points, and so on. This universal contribution list only had 99 people, and the last person would have around 5,000 points. On the Starry Sky Contribution ranking, Zhuowen saw a few familiar names. The 5 great monsters of the host region were basically all on the Starry Sky Contribution ranking. Among them, Ghost Plume's ranking wasn't bad. He was in the 30s and had around 23,000 points. Ghost Plume, you said before that if you have enough points in the Starry Sky battlefield, you can really exchange for a heaven-class elixir. How many points do you need? Zhuowen turned to Ghost Plume and asked. Ghost Plume's eyes flickered. There is indeed such a saying. I heard that if you want to exchange for a heaven-class elixir or artifact, you have to have more than 1,000,000 points. Zhongli Haoyan, the 1st place on the Starry Sky Contribution ranking, only has around 250,000 points. If you need more than 1,000,000 points to exchange for a heaven-class elixir, doesn't that mean that no one has ever successfully exchanged for a heaven-class elixir? Zhuowen was speechless. He felt that Ghost Plume's conditions were too harsh. Although he didn't know how difficult it was to obtain 1,000,000 points, if even the number 1 genius on the Starry Sky Contribution ranking couldn't reach 1,000,000 points, it was obvious how difficult it was. Ghost Plume smiled bitterly. That's why it's just a rumor. Since the establishment of the Starry Sky Contribution ranking, no one has met the requirements to exchange for a heaven-class elixir. Then how do you get these points? Zhuowen asked. there are many ways to get points. The most direct and effective way is to kill foreign races. The more foreign races you kill, the more points you get. Also, if you kill foreign races above your level, the points you get will be doubled. The higher your level, the higher the multiplier, Ghost Plume answered. Zhuowen was a little surprised. He didn't expect the Starry Sky contribution ranking to have such a rule. In other words, the stronger a cultivator was, the more points he could get. Chapter 29-21, Universal Contribution Points List. Master, if you want to accumulate points, you must first obtain a universal token. This universal token is a jade token that records your personal information. At the same time, it is also used to record the points you have accumulated during the battles with the foreign races. Ghost Plume saw that Zhuowen was interested and couldn't help but remind him. Okay, then let's get a universal token first. Zhuowen nodded and followed Ghost Plume into the contribution hall on the first floor of the Universal Tower. It had to be said that the interior of the Universal Tower was very spacious. Moreover, there were more than 10 counters in the hall. At each of these counters, there were small signboards for universal tokens. Although the number of cultivators in the Universal Camp had decreased sharply because of the Dark Ancient City, there were still many cultivators in the Universal Tower. Basically, they were all queuing up to get their universal tokens. It seems like the temptation of Gongong's Place of Death is very big. So many cultivators who haven't trained in the Star Wars battlefield are here. Yin Wuxia looked at the long lines and couldn't help but feel a little emotional. Generally, cultivators who have trained in the Star Wars battlefield would have their own universal tokens. Naturally, they didn't need to queue up at these counters to get their universal tokens. Zhuowen casually queued at the back of a line. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia had already gotten their universal tokens. Therefore, under Zhuowen's instructions, they waited at the side of the hall. After about 2 hours, it was finally Zhuowen's turn. In front of the counter was a young and beautiful female cultivator. However, this female cultivator looked very impatient, and her tone was a little impatient. "What's your name? What sector are you from?" The female cultivator repeated the same question mechanically. She didn't even raise her head. "My name is Ma Yujia. I'm a rogue cultivator." The moment Zhuowen said this name, the line next door also said the same name. In an instant, Zhuowen's face froze, and he looked at the line next door. As for the owner of the neighboring team, his voice also froze as he looked towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen saw a fat man, and the fat man also saw Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with confusion at first, but he quickly understood something. His eyes were spitting fire, and he was very angry. The female cultivator at the counter also sensed that something was amiss. She raised her head and looked at Zhuowen, then at the fatty in the next line. "What's wrong with you guys? He actually has the same name and is also a loose cultivator." "Oh, I'm so sorry. I gave the wrong name. I was too excited just now. It's my first time receiving the universal token, so I said the wrong thing." Zhuowen chuckled and continued. "My name is Longwen, an itinerant cultivator." The female cultivator at the counter didn't suspect anything. She glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and quickly engraved the 2 words Longwen on the surface of the universal token. She casually threw it to Zhuowen and said, 100 high-grade Heaven Path crystals. After Zhuowen paid the 100 high-grade Heaven Path crystals, he took the universal token and left the line. Zhuowen called out to Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia, who were waiting by the side, and hurriedly walked out of the Universal Tower. He cursed in his heart. To think that he would bump into this fatty Ma Yujia inside the Starry Sky Tower. His luck was really bad. However, as soon as Zhuowen left the Starry Sky Tower, he was stopped by a fat figure. looking at the aggressive fatty in front of him. Zhuowen seemed to have just noticed him. He laughed and said, "Oh, so it's Brother Ma. What a coincidence. I actually met Brother Ma here. This is fate." "Fate your ass." Ma Yujie spat. His eyes were full of hatred as he roared, "Zhuowen, you really tricked me. Last time, you deliberately gave me the fake realm-eluding underworld soul flower so that I could be your scapegoat, right? You're so cruel." Ma Yujie's voice was getting louder and louder. His anger was very strong. Many cultivators in the hall were attracted by Ma Yujie's voice and looked over with hostility. Zhuowen hurriedly pulled Ma Yujie away from the Starry Sky Tower. He brought Ma Yujie to a secluded corner and said in a deep voice, "Brother Ma, there are some forces from the 10 Extremities Incorp sect in this Starry Sky battlefield. It's best if you don't speak carelessly." "Bullshit your mother. Do you think Master Fatty is a retard? You have the nerve to talk to me. After tricking me so badly, you want to let it go so easily? Let me tell you, no way." Ma Yujie snorted and glared at him. "Brother Ma, you've really wronged me. It should be said that we were all tricked by the 10 Extremities Incorp sect. This has nothing to do with me," Zhuowen said. "Seriously." Ma Yujie snorted. Seeing that Zhuowen was serious, he became much quieter. "What do you mean?" Ma Yujie said coldly. "I did get the realm-eluding underworld soul flower from the underworld hell. I think the 10 Extremities Incorp sect put it there in advance to fake the realm-eluding underworld soul flower. Then, they probably did it to trick the cultivator, who obtained the realm-eluding underworld soul flower. Brother Ma, think about it. I've already given you the destiny-level godly herb, and even risked my life back then. Who can guarantee my life and death? Why would I do something to the underworld soul flower? There's no need for that at all." At this point, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a look of pity, as if he had suffered a great grievance. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxie stood behind him. They secretly thought that Zhuowen was thick-skinned and shameless enough. They praised him countless times in their hearts for his ability to distort the truth. "Huh." Ma Yujie saw Zhuowen's true feelings and couldn't help but be stunned. He began to believe what Zhuowen said. "Are you serious?" Ma Yujie asked uncertainly. "Of course I'm serious. When have I ever lied to you?" Zhuowen sighed. Ma Yujie couldn't help but show a look of disdain. This wasn't the first time Zhuowen talked nonsense to him. "I'll believe you for now. However, last time, I was almost beaten to death by the 10 Extremes Incorp sect Master Senki Yin and Great Elder Gao Yanghong. I suffered heavy losses. No matter what, you have to compensate me for the physical damage, right?" Ma Yujie spread his hands at Zhuowen, planning to ask for compensation. Zhuowen wasn't easy to deal with. Naturally, he wouldn't let Ma Yujie get away with his carelessness. The two of them went back and forth. In the end, Zhuowen took out a Genesis-grade divine medicine as compensation. Only then did Ma Yujie's anger completely subside. Ma Yujie twisted his fat body and leaned closer to Zhuowen. He said in a slightly vulgar manner, "Brother Zhuo, did you come to the Star Battlefield this time for the Dark Ancient City?" "Yes." "Isn't Brother Ma here?" Zhuowen asked in return. "Of course, it's because the corpse of ancestor Shaman Gongong is in the Dark Ancient City. This is already known by everyone. If it wasn't for this, why would I come here? Wouldn't I have nothing better to do?" Ma Yujie said. "Then does Brother Ma have any insider information?" Zhuowen asked. Chapter 29-22. At the entrance of the Dark Ancient City. I'm not too sure about the inside information, and I'm not sure if the corpse of ancestral shaman Gongong really exists in the Dark Ancient City. After all, this information was released by that old dog Senki Yin, so its credibility is questionable. When Ma Yujie mentioned Senki Yin's name, his gaze was unfriendly, and he was even gnashing his teeth. When he was chased by Senki Yin, he cried for his parents and almost died. One could imagine how much hatred he had for Senki Yin. Is that so? That's a pity, but it's fate to be able to meet Brother Ma. How about this? Let's continue to cooperate in this exploration of the dark ancient city. This way, we can take care of each other. Zhuowen suddenly said. Ma Yujie's eyes widened, and he hurriedly waved his hand. Cooperation? Forget it. I'm more suited to be alone. Whenever I cooperate with others, I'm unlucky. Especially when cooperating with you, I'm basically unlucky. Zhuowen's head was full of black lines. This damn fatty really didn't give him any face. He was treating him as a jinx. Even if he really treated him as a jinx, he should be more reserved with his words. It was really awkward to be so direct. Now, many people have already headed to the Dark Ancient City, and many experts from the foreign races have also arrived. It's said that there was a fierce clash, and the cultivators and the foreign races suffered heavy losses. Brother Zhuo, when you go to the Dark Ancient City, you have to be careful. Before Ma Yujie left, he left Zhuowen with these words of warning. It seems that the Dark Ancient City is very unstable. Ordinary cultivators have a high chance of dying when they enter the Dark Ancient City. Yin Wuxie said with a serious gaze. Gue Ling pointed at the universal contribution ranking in front of the plaza and said, from this ranking, it can be seen that the Dark Ancient City isn't a good place. In the short 2 hours that Master was applying for the Universal Peak token, there were many people who disappeared from the ranking and were replaced by new names. This means that several geniuses on the Universal Contribution ranking have died in the past 2 hours. Zhuowen nodded. Cultivators who were able to enter the Universal Contribution Board were all geniuses that were 1 in 10,000. Normally, it would be very difficult for them to fall. But now, several of them had fallen within 2 hours. It could be seen how fierce the battle in the Dark Ancient City was. Not long after Ma Yujie left, Zhuowen also set off for the Ancient City of Darkness. The Dark Ancient City was located in the center of the Star Wars battlefield and was more than 10 days away from the Star Camping Ground. The space-time roulette that Zhuowen used was very fast. It only took him 5 or 6 days to reach the periphery of the Dark Ancient City. The environment around the Dark Ancient City was mostly a meteorite belt formed by countless black gravel. The area of the meteorite belt was very large, and it expanded outward layer by layer as if it would never end. In the center of the meteorite belt, there was an extremely dense and evil black energy. This black energy was like chaos. It spread across the central area in an irregular manner and occupied most of the space there. Zhuowen looked over and vaguely saw the outline of a giant black city within the black energy. It was just that the black energy was like a black fog that completely covered the details of the giant city. He could only see a very vague outline. Zhuowen knew that the giant city hidden in the black fog was the destination of his trip, the Dark Ancient City. The moment he entered the meteorite belt, Zhuowen also noticed that there were many streams of light shooting towards him at an extremely fast speed. Moreover, the target of these streams of light was the Dark Ancient City in the center of the meteorite belt. Zhuowen's eyes were sharp. He noticed that the streams of light around him were not only human, but also foreign race figures. As he continued to get closer to the Dark Ancient City, Zhuowen discovered no less than 10 battles. Among them, there were battles between cultivators and foreign races. Zhuowen basically did not intervene in the battles between cultivators. However, Zhuowen actively intervened in the battles between cultivators and foreign races. Moreover, he very straightforwardly exterminated the foreign races. After all, killing foreign races gave him points. What he lacked the most now was points. He hoped to reach 1 million points as soon as possible and exchange them for the transcending heaven-grade spirit medicine he needed. However, the foreign races Zhuowen encountered along the way were too weak. They were basically trash in the first step of Tao confirming. Zhuowen only got 10 points for killing one of them. All along the way, Zhuowen basically used lightning-fast methods to annihilate all the Xeno race beings he encountered. When he arrived at the Dark Ancient City, he'd already annihilated almost 100 Xeno race beings, and the points on the Starry Sky token had reached almost 1,000 points. Zhuowen felt a little regretful. The foreign races he encountered along the way were all in the first step of Tao confirming. They were too weak. If he kept killing like this, when would he be able to collect 1 million points? The gate of the Dark Ancient City was a hollow gate formed by 2 huge black iron pillars. The top of the 2 iron pillars was connected by a black iron wire. At this moment, a group of thousands of people gathered in front of the gate of the Dark Ancient City. This group of people were basically all human cultivators. On the surface of the gate of the Dark Ancient City, there was an incomparably black barrier. This black barrier was very hard and had a tortoiseshell pattern on its surface. On both sides of the gate, there were 2 figures guarding it. One of them was a human cultivator, while the other was a merman with a black horn between his eyebrows and a body covered in black scales. Zhuowen brought Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxie to the gate, and immediately heard the angry voices of the human cultivators in front of the gate. Why can't you let us in just because we are rogue cultivators? Do rogue cultivators have no rights? The Dark Ancient City is a dangerous place in the Starry Sky battlefield. It is not the backyard of the 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect. What right does the 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect have to shut us out? Yes, the 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect is a little too overbearing. The voices of the crowd were protesting and criticizing the human cultivator guarding the gate. However, the merman crossed his arms and looked like he was watching a good show. Zhuowen landed in the crowd and listened for a while. He immediately knew why these people were gathered here. It turned out that these people were all rogue cultivators. The 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect had stipulated that rogue cultivators who did not belong to any sect did not have the right to enter the Dark Ancient City. Obviously, they did not want too many cultivators to come and plunder the Dark Ancient City. It should be known that in the entire Xianmi heavenly region, the largest number of rogue cultivators happened to be these rogue cultivators who did not belong to any sect. Although rogue cultivators were much weaker than the cultivators of other sects, their numbers were much greater than the disciples of other sections. If they swarmed into the Dark Ancient City, they would definitely divide up the treasures that might appear in the Dark Ancient City. After all, although the Dark Ancient City was full of danger, the greater the risk, the greater the reward. The probability of treasures appearing in the Dark Ancient City was also very high. Chapter 29-23. The Fat Man Assuming the Tiger's Might. Overbearing? You're right. Our 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect is just that overbearing. If you have the ability, then break the formation restriction in front of the gate for me to see. If you can break it, then I'll let you in. The human cultivator guarding the gate looked like a middle-aged man in his 40s. There were deep crow's feet at the corners of his eyes. Of course, Zhuowen knew that the middle-aged man's actual age was definitely much older than his 40s. At this moment, the middle-aged man's eyes were full of disdain. Even his tone was full of provocation and disdain. The middle-aged man's tone immediately angered the rogue cultivators who were blocked by the formation restriction. They all cursed him for being shameless. Zhuowen also knew that the middle-aged man's name was Gao Yi from the curses of the crowd. He was an ordinary deacon of the 10 Extremities In Corpse sect. He was not strong and was only a fated master. Among the rogue cultivators blocking the gate, there were many who were stronger than Gao Yi. However, due to the formation restriction outside the gate, they could only sullenly endure Gao Yi's disdainful gaze. If it was just the middle-aged man's mockery, the crowd would not be so angry. However, there was a foreign race standing beside the middle-aged man. Moreover, the foreign race was looking at them with a mocking gaze. This made them feel humiliated. One had to know that the war between the foreign race and the human race had been going on for countless years. The cultivators of the Xian Mi heavenly domain hated the foreign race to the core. Now, this middle-aged man was standing guard at the gate with the outsiders, refusing to let them in. This was unacceptable to them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. While the rogue cultivators were in an uproar, 3 streaks of light flew over from afar and finally landed in front of the gate. These were 3 mermen covered in scales. The 3 mermen did not care about the rogue cultivators who were blocked outside the gate. Instead, they went straight to the gate and said a few words to the merman guarding the gate. The merman nodded and let the 3 mermen in. Seeing this scene, the crowd was in an uproar. They all looked at Gao Yi angrily and questioned him for letting the foreign race in, but not letting them in. Gao Yi was high and mighty, his eyes full of disdain as he said, "What do you all know? The dark ancient city is extremely dangerous. Most of the Dao Palace level forces in our Xian Mi Sky domains, 4 Dao domains, have already come to an agreement with the foreign races, forming a temporary alliance. Before we find the corpse of Grand Wizard Gonggong, we will not attack. Instead, we will cooperate to explore and resist the unknown dangers in the dark ancient city. I'll be honest with you. The dangers in the outer perimeter of the dark ancient city have been swept clean by the alliance. Now, as long as you wander around the outer perimeter of the dark ancient city, you won't be in too much danger. Instead, you'll be able to reap some benefits and rewards. Could it be that you rogue cultivators who don't belong to any sects want to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor? I think you're dreaming. Now, get the hell out of here. You're all a disgrace to us human cultivators by gathering here." Gao Yi's voice was dripping with sarcasm as he raised his voice, intending to chase away the numerous rogue cultivators at the door. "Yo, you humans are really shameless. You don't even have the qualifications to enter the dark ancient city, yet you still gather here. Your skin is thicker than the city walls." The merman standing not far from Gao Yi revealed a disdainful smile as he began to mock them. "Thorpe, when you're ridiculing, it's best if you know who you're ridiculing. The ones who are shameless are these loose cultivators. Every single one of us sect disciples is a proud son of heaven. How can these loose cultivators compare to us? Hee. In my opinion, you human cultivators are all the same. What sect?" The merman Thorpe sneered. Gao Yi's expression was ugly as he said coldly, "Thorpe, aren't you being too presumptuous? At the very least, your merman race is still cooperating with our sect. Cooperation is cooperation. I'm mocking you because I want to. There's no need to implicate our cooperation. Our primitive heavenly realm believes in power above all else. As long as your fist is big enough, you can do whatever you want. You're the boss. Gao Yi, if you're not happy, you can fight with me directly. I'll accompany you to the end. It's really boring to talk like this." Thorpe chuckled. Gao Yi frowned slightly. He glanced at Thorpe and fell silent instead. Thorpe's cultivation was about the same as Gao Yi's, around the level of a master of destiny. However, Thorpe was a foreign race. His physical body was powerful and his cultivation and physical strength were often much stronger than human cultivators of the same level. Unless they were monstrous geniuses with terrifying battle prowess, ordinary human cultivators were often much weaker than foreign race cultivators of the same level. Gao Yi admitted that he was not strong enough and was not Thorpe's opponent, so he easily admitted defeat. "You really are a coward. You humans are all the same. Am I right?" Thorpe sneered. His laughter was very savage and unrestrained. Gao Yi's face flushed red, but he did not dare to flare up at Thorpe. He could not help but vent his anger on the numerous rogue cultivators outside. He roared, "You bunch of trash! Why aren't you scramming yet? If you don't scram, I'll activate the offensive restriction on this formation." Many rogue cultivators were unable to restrain their anger. This Gao Yi was really too cowardly. He was a guy who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Zhuowen shook his head. He felt that Gao Yi was really a coward. Just as he was thinking about whether or not he should take action to break the formation, a voice suddenly rang out. Then Zhuowen saw a familiar fat figure trying to squeeze out of the crowd. "I say, you're called Gao Yi, right? This fat lord will give you a chance. Immediately open the formation and let this fat lord in. Otherwise, your fate will be very miserable." Zhuowen took a closer look. Wasn't this fat figure Ma Yujie, who he had just separated from in the Starry Sky Pagoda? At this moment, Ma Yujie's face was very serious. His body exuded a dignified aura. For a moment, many rogue cultivators present were stunned. Many people discussed spiritedly. A cultivator with such an imposing aura probably had an extraordinary background. After all, this kind of aura was not something a trivial rogue cultivator could possess. Gao Yi was also intimidated. He revealed a hesitant look and asked uncertainly, "Who are you?" "Your Grandpa Ma is me. When your Grandpa Ma and your sect Master Senki Yin exchanged pointers, you weren't even born yet. You can't even recognize me now? Is there shit in your head?" Chapter 29-24. Arrogant for a moment, everyone present involuntarily retreated, distancing themselves from Ma Yujie. This fatty was labeled as mentally ill in everyone's hearts. Zhuowen also consciously retreated, but his thoughts were different from the others. When Ma Yujie was spouting nonsense, he had already discovered that this fatty had secretly placed 2 array flags on both sides of the door. Furthermore, although the fatty's hands seemed to be waving randomly, he was actually making hand seals to break the array. He knew that the fatty was stalling for time to break the array. If Zhuowen wasn't wrong, then the array formation set up on the gates of the Dark Ancient City was a Genesis grade array formation. With Ma Yujie's array formation skills, it wouldn't be difficult to break it. However, breaking the array formation would still require a certain amount of time. Also, you son of a B***, TCH better watch out for me. This is my brother, an existence that even your sect master has to address respectfully as Grandpa. Now that you're blocking us outside, you're just looking for trouble for yourself. Fortunately, your sect master isn't here. Otherwise, your head would be kicked by me like a ball. Ma Yujie's eyes were sharp. He immediately saw Zhuowen's figure, who wanted to retreat with the crowd. He immediately pointed his right hand at Zhuowen, his voice full of pride. Zhuowen's body stiffened, but he was cursing in his heart. Brother, your sister. This damn fatty was indeed a narrow-minded guy. He was planning to drag him down with him. He was probably trying to take revenge on him for tricking this fatty. Sure enough, the moment Ma Yujie pointed at Zhuowen, the gazes of those rogue cultivators converged on Zhuowen. Then, they hurriedly retreated a large distance away from Zhuowen. Obviously, in their eyes, Zhuowen had also been labeled as a mentally ill brother. The veins on Gao Yi's forehead bulged, and his eyes were bloodshot. He glared at the fatty in front of the door and said, "Damn fatty, who do you think you are? A mere heaven's mandate master dares to call our sect master brother? Where does your confidence come from? And where does your intelligence come from? How can you say something so retarded?" Zhuowen glanced at Ma Yujie and shook his head inwardly. He refused to believe that this fatty's cultivation base was only that of the mandate of heaven. The last time he had met this fatty in the 10 Extremes Een Corp sect, he had not been able to see through this fatty's cultivation. Now, the aura he was releasing was only that of the destined master. He knew that the fatty must have deliberately disguised his cultivation level. As for the fatty's exact cultivation level, he still had not figured it out. However, he knew that the fatty's strength was probably not weaker than his. In fact, the fatty might even be slightly stronger than him. Otherwise, the fatty would not have been able to escape the pursuit of Senki Een, Gao Yanghong, and the 10 ultimate Een Corp sect experts. I'm just teasing you. If you're not convinced, then come out and bite me. What are you hiding in there like an egg? Ma Yujie was very despicable. He deliberately moved his fat head closer to the door, and even used his right hand to slap Gao Yi's right cheek. He taunted arrogantly, "I'll stand here and let you hit me. If a coward like you has the guts, then hit my right cheek. Hit it hard, hit it lightly, and you'll be a coward." Gao Yi was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. However, he did not lose his rationality. He knew that even if he went out now and hit the fatty, there was a group of rogue cultivators outside. He would probably be surrounded and beaten up if he went out now. Good, damn fatty. You're arrogant enough. Today, I'll let you see the price of angering me. Gao Yi snorted coldly and took out a compass-like formation plate. Immediately, his right hand formed a seal. Suddenly, the formation in front of the door emitted a blazing white light. The energy within the formation also became violent, like a fierce beast that was about to awaken from its slumber. "Ha! Damn fatty, you're screwed. This is a god of creation spell formation. It's combined with a powerful offensive formation that can rival the normal attacks of the average god of creation. You're just a piece of trash that's destined to die under the attacks of this formation very soon. Do you have any last words?" Gao Yi roared with laughter as he looked at Ma Yujie with disdain and contempt in his eyes. Ma Yujie chuckled coldly as he looked at Gao Yi as if he were looking at an idiot. "You piece of trash, I'm not the one who should be leaving behind any last words. You should be the one leaving behind any last words." Ma Yujie chuckled coldly, and he dropped all pretense. Zhuowen nodded internally. He knew that Ma Yujie's plan to break the formation had already succeeded. Now, this god of creation spell formation was completely under the fatty's control. "You're about to die, and you're still quibbling? Die." Gao Yi flew into a rage out of humiliation, and he formed a final hand seal. Immediately, the white light from the formation in front of the door reached its most intense state. Immediately afterward, an extremely terrifying attack erupted. "Ha! You're dead meat." Gao Yi threw his head back and roared with laughter as he watched the scorching white light shoot out as a streak of light. However, Gao Yi's face soon stiffened. This was because he discovered that the streak of white light did not shoot towards the fatty in front of the door. Instead, it shot towards him. "Ga, what's going on?" Fear filled Gao Yi's eyes. Soon after, he was completely enveloped by the streak of white light. With a wail of agony, he completely lost all signs of life as he was blasted into nothingness by the streak of white light. The scene immediately fell silent. This unexpected outcome had stunned everyone. Meanwhile, the Merman Thorpe returned to his senses. The corners of his eyes constantly twitched, and he immediately distanced himself from the door. What the hell was this formation? The attack it had unleashed was actually aimed at him. Was this murder or suicide? He had to distance himself as much as possible. Otherwise, he would follow in Gao Yi's footsteps. Outside the door, the independent cultivators who had retreated into the distance also stared at this scene in confusion. Clearly, they had never thought that the final outcome would actually be like this. As expected of Brother Ma, your formation skills have actually reached such a level. Zhuowen looked at Ma Yujia's back with a rather solemn gaze. He discovered that this damn fatty's formation skills had improved a little compared to when he was in the 10 Extremes Een Corp sect. He was actually able to break the Genesis level formation at the entrance of the Dark Ancient City in such a short period of time and control it in his own hands. Zhuowen possessed the profound meaning of the infinite primordial chaos, which could break all techniques. He was confident that he could break the formation within the door in a short period of time. However, it was somewhat difficult to reverse the formation and control it in his own hands. He was currently unable to do so. Clearly, Ma Yujia's formation skills were higher than his by a level. Hey, little trash, why are you retreating? Now that you know this fatty's honorable identity, let me in now. Otherwise, you'll end up like that nothingness. Ma Yujia patted his round belly and grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. When the merman Thorpe saw Ma Yujia's row of white teeth, he inexplicably felt a chill in his heart. This was not the first time Gao Yi had used the formation restriction of the door. Previously, there had been some unruly independent cultivators who wanted to rely on their cultivation to force their way in, but they were all destroyed by Gao Yi using the formation. However, just now, when Gao Yi activated the attack formation again, he was the one who was destroyed. It was really strange. Chapter 29-25. Barging in, you can come in alone. Thorpe pondered for a while before finally deciding to let the fatty in. He felt that the fatty should be an array expert, so he didn't dare to provoke him. It was better to let him pass. That's more like it. A little fish like you is sensible, unlike that idiot who didn't even recognize me. He's really short-sighted. Ma Yujia swaggered into Thorpe's open door and patted him on the shoulder. The latter could only force a smile and didn't dare to be rash. Zhuowen knew that this was an opportunity and hurriedly followed, but Thorpe had already closed the door's restriction. I'm his brother, let me in, Zhuowen said indifferently. Thorpe smiled apologetically. Just as he was about to open the door, Ma Yujia waved his hand and said seriously, Little fish, is there something wrong with your brain? When did I say that this guy is my brother? Close the door and guard this door for me, understand? Thorpe's face stiffened. He slowly withdrew his right hand that was about to open the door and hurriedly nodded and bowed to Ma Yujia. Not bad, do a good job. I have high hopes for you. Ma Yujia patted Thorpe's shoulder and swaggered off, heading towards the depths of the dark ancient city. Zhuowen. Numerous rogue cultivators. Zhuowen's face instantly fell. This damn fatty's skin was really too thick. He was trying to kill him without paying with his life. Those who have nothing to do with this, scram. Don't gather here. As soon as Ma Yujia left, Thorpe immediately regained his arrogant nature and impatiently waved at Zhuowen and the others, telling them to get lost. You know who I am? Zhuowen arrived at the door and said calmly, I don't care who you are, as long as you're not that fatty's brother. Thorpe said coldly, Yes, that fatty is indeed not my brother, but I'm not someone you can afford to offend. Zhuowen's eyes were cold as he clenched his right fist. The surface of his fist emitted a sparkling and translucent light, and a vast and terrifying aura was exposed. Rumble! Zhuowen fiercely slammed his fist in front of the door. Immediately after, an explosive sound like that of a mountain collapsing, and the earth splitting erupted. Soon after, countless cracks began to appear on the surface of the barrier. Finally, with a cracking sound, the entire barrier was destroyed by Zhuowen's brute force. Everyone was dumbfounded. Just now, the fatty had used array formation Dao to control the array formation restriction. His methods were already powerful enough. However, the young man in front of him was even more powerful. He directly used brute force to shatter the restriction in front of the gate into countless pieces. Thorpe let out a pained cry and fell to the ground. His entire body trembled as he watched the young man slowly walk through the door amidst the countless fragments of the array formation. What kind of freak was this guy? This was a god of creation stage formation. Even the average god of creation wouldn't be able to shatter it with brute force. But this young man had done it, and it didn't seem to be strenuous at all. Could it be that this guy was a master of creation? Of course, Zhuowen wasn't a master of creation. He had merely found the weak point of the array formation restriction in front of the gate. Moreover, this array formation had already been broken by Ma Yujie before, and was now under his control. After Ma Yujie left, many flaws had appeared in the array formation, and its power was much weaker than before. Zhuowen had precisely grasped the flaw in this array formation. With a full-powered strike, it wasn't difficult for him to shatter this array formation. Thorpe was so frightened that he kept retreating, cursing inwardly. What was going on today? The arrival of the fatty was already terrifying enough. Now, an even more freakish person had arrived. He had actually shattered the array formation in front of the gate. This was really too unlucky. You what? Die. Zhuowen cast a sidelong glance at Thorpe, who looked like he had seen a ghost. His right hand formed a claw and reached out towards Thorpe. Thorpe howled, his entire body erupting with the power of water as he unhesitatingly began to flee. Unfortunately, Thorpe was only a Heaven's Mandate Lord. In Zhuowen's eyes, he was far too weak. Zhuowen grabbed Thorpe with his claw. However, just as Zhuowen was about to crush Thorpe's body, Thorpe immediately revealed his true form, a shark. Thorpe's entire body was covered in a disgusting mucus. He actually managed to slip away from Zhuowen's claw and swiftly fled into the void. Oh, your escape skill is not bad. Zhuowen's eyes flashed with surprise, but he wasn't surprised. His right hand formed a fist and punched out. Instantly, the space around him for tens of billions of li began to ripple. This fist contained the power of space-time, reversing space-time, so that nothing in the surrounding space-time could hide. Ah! Sure enough, in a certain space-time, there was a miserable scream. Thorpe, who had fled into the void, fell to the ground not too far away. His entire body was drenched in blood and constantly twitching. He was already gasping for air and was not far from death. Zhuowen casually sent out a divine flame and burned Thorpe to ashes, earning some points in his Starry Sky card. However, these points were very few. After all, Thorpe was simply too weak. He was only a Heaven's Mandate Lord. After killing Thorpe, Zhuowen ignored the dumbfounded rogue cultivators behind him. Instead, he turned into a stream of light and entered the ancient city of darkness. In front of the gate, the rogue cultivators who had just come back to their senses were pleasantly surprised. The seal on the gate has been removed. We can also enter the ancient city of darkness. This is a rare opportunity. Everyone, hurry and enter. It was unknown who said this, but everyone swarmed into the dark ancient city. In the depths of the ancient city of darkness, in front of a massive mountain range, a large group of people was stationed. Among them were human cultivators as well as foreign race experts. However, the human cultivators and foreign race experts were clearly stationed on two sides, each minding their own business. At this moment, in the camp of the foreign race experts, the Merman race's representative, Sauron, had a very ugly expression. In his right hand, a black bead had already shattered. "Commander Sauron, why did you call me here?" A strong merman came in from outside the tent. He looked respectfully at Sauron and asked in a deep voice, "Li Yang, Thorpe's life pearl has shattered." Sauron said with a gloomy expression, "What? Thorpe was killed. How is that possible? Who is so bold as to kill a member of my merman race at the gate of the ancient city of darkness?" Li Yang said in shock, "Someone did it. Now, go to the entrance of the ancient city of darkness for me and help me find out who is so bold as to kill my brother." Sauron said with a murderous aura. Li Yang nodded, accepted Sauron's order, and left the tent. Although Thorpe was a very ordinary warrior in the merman race, he had a good older brother, Sauron. Sauron was a genius in the merman race who received a lot of attention and had a very high status. It was because of Sauron that Thorpe was qualified to come to the ancient city of darkness and was even sent to guard the gate of the ancient city of darkness. Because this was a job that was basically not dangerous, Sauron was also wary of Thorpe's low strength and was not willing to let him take the risk to protect him. Chapter 29, 26.4 kills. What rich energy! As expected of the dark ancient city, the moment Zhuowen entered the dark ancient city, he could feel that the energy inside was extremely rich. It was many times richer than the outside world. The interior of the dark ancient city was basically filled with scattered black walls and ruins. It looked as if this used to be a grand and prosperous city, but because of an unknown war, the grand city had been reduced to ruins. The dark ancient city was very spacious and filled with layers of black fog. If it weren't for Zhuowen's powerful consciousness, it would have been very difficult to distinguish the direction in front of him. Zhuowen moved forward at a very fast speed. Although he knew that there were many good things in the periphery of the dark ancient city, with his current wealth, he really didn't care about the things in the periphery of the dark ancient city. And the things that he cared about were at least at the Genesis level or above. Treasures of this level were obviously not likely to appear in the periphery of the dark ancient city. As Zhuowen continued to fly forward, he realized that there were several streams of light following him closely behind. To Zhuowen's surprise, although he was not flying at full speed, his speed was not something an ordinary cultivator could keep up with. However, he did not manage to shake off the several streams of light behind him. Clearly, they were not simple people. Zhuowen's eyes flashed as he stopped in front of them. The moment he stopped, the streams of light behind him also stopped, maintaining a safe distance from Zhuowen. Behind Zhuowen were 3 cultivators, 2 men and 1 woman. One of the men was an old man, while the other was a young-looking youngster. As for the woman, she looked very young, probably around 17 or 18 years old. She had a pair of blinking big eyes that revealed a sense of purity, making people have a good impression of her at first glance. "Why are the 3 of you following me?" Zhuowen's eyes were calm as he looked at the 3 people in front of him and asked. With Zhuowen's eyesight, he could naturally see that these 3 people had come from the main entrance. They should be the cultivators from the group of rogue cultivators. The old man cupped his hands respectfully and said, "Brother, we would like to travel with you. Is that okay?" "Sorry, I'm used to traveling alone. I don't plan on forming a team." Zhuowen bluntly refused. The old man's face showed obvious disappointment, but the young man beside the old man looked inexperienced and said impulsively, "Hey, are you looking down on us just because you're strong? My grandfather is an Eternal Lord expert. Although you're strong, you're not much stronger than my grandfather. You should know that the Dark Ancient City is an extremely dangerous place in the Starry Sky battlefield. The risk of a person dying is very high. With our help, you will naturally get twice the result for half the effort. Cooperating with us will only bring you benefits." Little of the olds. He is. On the other hand, The young girl was curiously sizing up Zhuo, as if she was very interested in Zhuo. Big brother, my grandfather is really powerful. If you go to the dark ancient city with us, it will be much easier. I'm not lying to you. May never lies. The young girl's big eyes were clear and pure. She was like a little sister next door. At first glance, one would have a good impression of her. As she spoke, the young girl trotted over to Zhuo, and her jade-like hand reached out to pull Zhuo. Zhuo narrowed his eyes and slowly stepped back. Although he didn't feel the slightest killing intent from the young girl, he felt that something was wrong. Big brother, do you dislike Ame? Seeing Zhuo step back, the young girl's tender body stiffened. Her beautiful big eyes were slightly red, like a pear blossom in the rain. I'm really sorry. I've already said that I'm used to traveling alone. As for cooperation, there's no need to talk about it. Zhuo said indifferently, Oh, Ame was rude. Big brother, I'm sorry. The young girl pouted. Her big eyes were full of resentment. She bowed deeply to Zhuo to express her apology. However, Zhuo felt that something was wrong. An inexplicable chill filled his body, causing all the hair on his body to stand on end. Immediately, he found that the young girl in front of him who bowed to him directly exploded, forming countless blood-colored energies. These blood-colored energies were like meteors. They quickly outlined around Zhuo and formed a blood-colored barrier. Whoosh! A blood-colored light flickered behind Zhuo. Zhuo noticed it in advance. He took a step and dodged the blood-colored light behind him. Immediately, he focused his eyes and found that the blood-colored light turned out to be a blood-colored dagger. Zhuo was no stranger to this blood-colored dagger. Wasn't it the weapon commonly used by the blood prison assassins? Moreover, this blood-colored dagger was covered with very mysterious patterns. The surface of these patterns was filled with an aura that even Zhuo was afraid of. There was no doubt that this blood-colored dagger was much more advanced and powerful than the killing swords used by the blood prison assassins. Obviously, the person who attacked was definitely an expert of the blood prison. Clang! Similarly, a blood-colored light swept out from Zhuo's sleeve and slashed at the blood-colored dagger that suddenly swept over, producing a rather ear-piercing sound of metal clashing. The blood-colored light was the blood immortal sword. Zhuo took the opportunity to quickly retreat. Only then did he clearly see that the person who attacked him from behind was an old woman with white hair and a bumpy face. This old woman's face was ferocious, like a malicious spirit. Hee, you're quite vigilant. You actually escaped my sneak attack. You're much smarter than the Lord of Profound Secrets I've assassinated before. I like it. Although this old woman looked very ugly, her voice was as childish as a child's. Moreover, this voice was not unfamiliar to Zhuo. It was the voice of the young girl, just now. Obviously, the young girl just now should be this old woman in disguise. Fourth kill. Zhuo narrowed his eyes and quickly noticed the word on the cuff of the old woman's right hand. Obviously, this old woman was fourth kill of the blood prison's 7 kills. Zhuo was very surprised. He had just killed 5th kill, 6th kill, and 7th kill a few days ago, and the blood prison actually immediately sent 4th kill. This action was too fast. Are you avenging 5th kill and the others? Zhuo asked with a gloomy look. 5th kill? You met 5th kill, and the others? 5th kill, and the others are really trash. They found you, but couldn't kill you. If it weren't for the aura of the blood of my blood prison assassins on you, I wouldn't have known that you were the target of my blood prison. 4th kill said sinisterly. Zhuo was speechless. It turned out that 4th kill was not sent by the blood prison to kill him. It turned out that he had sensed the aura of the blood prison assassins on him. However, on second thought, Zhuowen felt that this was reasonable. After all, he had only killed Fifth Kill and the others a few days ago. No matter how fast the blood prison moved, it was impossible to send another member of the 7 kills to kill him in just a few days. Chapter 29-27. Li Yangwush. While Zhuowen was deep in thought, the old man and the young man not far away had already removed their disguises and rushed out to attack Zhuowen. Their speed was very fast, and they did not show any mercy. The old man and the young man were not weak. They were roughly at the peak of the Eternal Overlord realm. With the strength of the blood prison assassins, they had the ability to assassinate an early-stage creator. However, in front of Zhuowen, these 2 blood prison assassins were no threat to him. Get lost! Zhuowen snorted coldly and clenched his hands into fists. His body emitted a crystal-clear light, and a violent aura surged out. Boom! Zhuowen performed the tyrannical Dao slaughtering technique with both hands and blasted out both fists at the old man and the young man. The old man and the young man felt the terrifying power of Zhuowen's fist. Their faces changed, and they twisted their bodies like agile snakes, trying to avoid Zhuowen's terrifying fist. Unfortunately, Zhuowen had already anticipated their sudden change in direction. His fist transformed into a claw and quickly grabbed at the 2 of them. The old man and the young man were helpless. Seeing Zhuowen's claw coming at them, they knew that they could only face it head-on. It was obviously impossible to avoid it. Crack! Unfortunately, the moment the old man and the young man collided with Zhuowen's claw, the blood-red daggers in their hands were instantly shattered. Then Zhuowen's claw mercilessly smashed at their chests. A terrifying force erupted, and the old man and the young man's chests instantly caved in. They screamed and were sent flying backward, crashing into the ruins not far away. Looking at the 2 dying and twitching bodies, their injuries were probably extremely serious. Although they were not dead, they were almost half dead. Bang! At this moment, Sisha had blasted the blood immortal sword away. She happened to see this scene, and her pupils shrank. Although she had long expected that this boy's strength wasn't ordinary, she didn't expect him to be so strong. Her 2 subordinates weren't weak and were ranked in the upper echelons of blood prison, but in front of this boy, they couldn't even take a single blow. The blood immortal sword returned to Zhuowen's side. Its body was full of bumps and holes, and its brilliance was dim. Apparently, the blood immortal sword was extremely embarrassed by Sisha, and was now crying to Zhuowen, "You go back to the outside world first. I will avenge you. Let this old woman remember that not everyone can beat my people. Since she did it, she must pay a terrible price." Zhuowen's voice was cold. The blood immortal sword clearly understood. With a buzz, it entered the macro world. "What did you say?" Sisha was crazy, looking at Zhuowen. Her eyes were very unkind. Although her appearance was indeed that of an old woman, her status in the blood prison was very high, and no one had ever dared to call her an old woman in front of her. Although Fourth Kill looked very disgusting, she was still a woman. No woman could stand being called an old woman by others. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have called you an old woman." Hearing Zhuowen's words, Sisha's face became slightly better. She said coldly, "Don't think that I will forgive you just because you said a few words of apology. Today, you will still die, but I may make your death look better. You may have misunderstood. I really shouldn't have called you an old woman. I should have called you a dead old woman, because you are going to die soon." Zhuowen immediately interrupted Sisha's voice. His eyes were full of murderous intent, and all the power of the peak Pangu's sacred body burst out from his body. He bounced his feet and burst out like an arrow. Wherever he passed, a terrible white cloud dissipated. It was very frightening. "Ah, little bastard, I must kill you today." How dare you insult me? Quadruple Killer was in a frenzy. His figure was erratic, leaving only a blurry, bloody shadow in the void. Zhuo was awe-inspiring and fearless. He swung out his fists and executed the Tao slaughtering hegemonic arts. It was as if he was above the heaven Tao, and every punch he blasted out basically accurately smashed onto Sisha's drifting figure. Sisha was a little mad. At the same time, she was also a little shocked. She didn't expect that Zhuo would know her position in advance every time. Moreover, he would throw a punch that landed on her body, forcing her to defend herself. What shocked her even more was Zhuowen's strength. This guy was clearly just Lord Xuanji, but the power of his punches was very strong. Every time she took a blow, her hands almost became numb. She really couldn't figure out how a mere Lord Xuanji could have such terrifying combat strength. She was Sisha of the Blood Prison. Her strength was already at the peak of the Creator Realm, and she would soon break through to the half-step Creator Realm. Her assassination methods and killing techniques were rare in the world. It was difficult to find a match. In the past, she had even killed an early-stage Creator Realm expert. Now, however, she was actually evenly matched with a cultivator from Lord Xuanji. This was not a F*** Dream, was it? Zhuowen was also quite surprised. His Pangu's sacred body was still at the peak of the 5-star level. The strength of his every move was very terrifying. He had once guessed that with the current strength of his Panga sacred body, he could fight an early-stage Creator Realm expert. Of course, he might not be able to defeat one. However, it would be very difficult for an early-stage Creator Realm expert to kill him. Sisha was only at the peak of the Creator Realm. He had thought that it would not be difficult to get rid of Sisha. Now, it seemed that he had thought too much. Sisha's combat strength was very terrifying, especially her ghost-like movement technique. Sometimes, it was difficult to catch her. It had to be said that Sisha's strength was much stronger than Sisha, and Sisha combined. This made Zhuowen's heart sink. Sisha of the Blood Prison's 7 killers was already so difficult to deal with. Then, wouldn't the top 3 killers be stronger than Sisha? In other words, if he faced Sisha this time, he was afraid that he would not be a match for him. He would have to use his real trump card. Bang! 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 The battle between Zhuowen and Sisha became more and more violent. Many nearby cultivators did not dare to get close to the battle range of the two of them. They were afraid that they would be involved in the aftermath of the battle and die, without a burial place. Li Yong led 5 merfolk elites and aggressively walked towards the entrance of the Dark Ancient City. He wanted to know which bold cultivator dared to kill their mermaids. If he were to find out, he would definitely chop the culprit into pieces. However, when Li Yong approached the periphery not far from the entrance, he felt violent energy fluctuations coming from not far away. Li Yang's expression changed slightly. He was familiar with these violent energy fluctuations. Someone should be fighting. Originally, Li Yong did not pay attention to ordinary battles. He did not even bother to look at them. However, at this moment, the battle fluctuations were very strong. Li Yong was sure that this was at least a battle of the Creator Realm. The Creator Realm was an almighty in the 3rd step of Tao validation. Their strength was unfathomable, whether it was the Xian Mi heavenly domain or the primitive heavenly domain. Such an expert was already considered an expert standing at the peak. Chapter 29-28 exposed the truth. What Li Yong was puzzled about was that this was clearly only the periphery of the Dark Ancient City. Why would there be such a great battle between experts of this level? Li Yong naturally didn't believe that it was for treasures. There were indeed a lot of good things in the periphery of the Dark Ancient City, but they were nothing to 3rd step Tao validation experts. Li Yong felt that it was ridiculous to fight over treasures outside the dark ancient city. My lord, when the 5 merfolk elites behind Li Yong saw that Li Yong had stopped, they looked at him in confusion, seeking his opinion. Go. Let's go over and take a look. I want to see what could cause a fight between 2 third-step powerhouses. With a wave of his hand, Li Yong led his 5 subordinates towards the scene where Zhuowen and Four Skills were fighting. Is it the 4th of the Blood Prison's 7 kills? At a glance, Li Yong saw the figure of the old woman holding the blood-red short sword. His eyes were filled with surprise. Although he was a merman from the great, desolate heaven domain, and not a human from the Xianmi heaven domain, he still knew about the various factions in the Xianmi heaven domain. This blood prison was a very special faction in the Xianmi heaven domain, so Li Yong naturally knew about it. He also knew that, for an assassin like Quadruple Kill to be dispatched, the target that Quadruple Kill wanted to kill was probably not ordinary and had a complicated background. However, the moment Li Yong saw Zhuowen, his face froze. This was because he realized that the young man who was fighting Quad Kill didn't have a strong aura. He was just Lord Xuanji. Holy sh*T, what's going on? Isn't it supposed to be a creator? Why is it just the Lord of Profound Secrets? Li Yong found this to be inconceivable. How could a mere Lord of Profundity be so powerful that he could fight against a peak creator like Xia without being defeated? And what was the background of this young man? Not only Li Yong, but many of the surrounding cultivators who were attracted by the aftermath of the battle also felt incredulous. Zhuowen's cultivation aura was too weak, but his strength was so strong. This went against common sense. Behind Li Yong, one of his subordinates suddenly said, "Lord Li Yong, this human's main strength isn't his cultivation, but his physical strength." Li Yong narrowed his eyes. Only now did he begin to notice that the main power of the youth with 2 scars was indeed from his fleshly body that was emitting a sparkling light, and not from the energy of the heavenly Tao that human cultivators used. This human's physical body is very unusual. He's so strong. I'm afraid that even the strongest race in the primeval heavenly realm, the shaman race, which is known for their physical bodies, probably doesn't have such a monstrous talent. He's able to take on the Lord of Profundity's Quadruple Kill of a peak Lord of Creation. Zhuowen and 4 kills, who were in the midst of a battle, noticed the surrounding cultivators. That was especially true of the mermen that Li Yong brought over. They were particularly eye-catching amongst the surrounding cultivators. Zhuowen frowned. Clearly, he had not thought that the merfolk would actually come. Was it because of Thorpe? Xia also saw Li Yong and the other merfolk. Her eyes shone with a strange, scarlet light. She sneered. "I didn't think that the merfolk would come. Looks like they already know that the gatekeeper has been killed. They've come to investigate. If he knows that the merfolk who killed the gatekeeper is right in front of him, I wonder what the merfolk will do?" Xia sneered as she looked at Zhuowen mockingly. The young man's strength had exceeded her expectations. She suspected that Xia might have already been slain by him. She knew that she would not be able to take him down in a short period of time, but now that the merfolk had come to investigate Thorpe's death, things would be simple. Zhuowen's gaze was rather hostile. He said coldly, "You won't have the chance to say who the real culprit is." With that, Zhuowen's right hand formed a blade. Immediately, a shocking blade light erupted from his right hand. Soon after, a terrifying white light filled the entire starry sky. Everyone's eyes seemed to be left with only the soaring blade light. Fourth Kill's pupils shrank. Her eyes were filled with fear. That was because the saber light was too terrifying. It made her feel like she was about to die. Whoosh! The blade light was very fast. It instantly landed in front of Xia. Xia only had the chance to raise her blood-red short sword. However, the moment her blood-red short sword collided with the blade light, She was horrified to find that her blood-red short sword shattered, and her entire body was shredded by the blade light. Seeing this, many of the surrounding cultivators looked at Zhuowen in awe. Their gazes were filled with dread. Everyone could see Sisha's identity, but such an expert had still been killed by this young man. Although Zhuowen's aura was only that of the Lord of Mystery, in the eyes of many people, this young man was definitely hiding his cultivation. In reality, he was a very terrifying expert at the level of an old monster. Li Yang narrowed his eyes and looked at the young man with some dread. The blade light that the young man had released just now was very terrifying. Even he had to use all his strength to block it. It was clear that this young man was not simple. This young man is a rogue cultivator. He forced his way into the Dark Ancient City and even killed the gatekeepers at the entrance of the Dark Ancient City. One of them was from your merfolk race. I remembered that guy was called Thorpe. Suddenly, not far from Li Yang, a gloomy voice sounded. Soon after, a blood-red piece of flesh grew continuously and finally turned into an old woman with a face full of wrinkles. This old woman was Sisha, who had been killed by Zhuowen. However, he did not expect Sisha to still be alive. However, Sisha's complexion was not very good. She was very pale, and her aura was somewhat weak. It was likely that Zhuowen's attack had caused her quite a bit of damage. Li Yang's gaze turned cold. He looked at Sisha, who had been reborn, and said coldly, "You said this young man killed Thorpe?" Sisha's voice was somewhat weak. She took out a crystal ball from her sleeve and tossed it to Li Yang, saying, "You can take a look at this if you don't believe me." Li Yang narrowed his eyes and looked at the crystal ball. There was an image playing in the crystal ball. The image was the scene of Zhuowen killing Thorpe. Crack! The veins on Li Yang's forehead bulged as he looked at Zhuowen with an unfriendly gaze. He growled, "Human, how dare you kill Thorpe? Know Thorpe's identity?" Zhuowen frowned. He did not care about Li Yang. Instead, he looked at Sisha, who had been reborn. He did not expect Sisha to still be alive. Chapter 29:29. Miserable Li Yang. Li Yang was enraged when he saw that the youth in front of him was ignoring him. A ferocious aura suddenly erupted from his body. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows and glanced at Li Yang of the Merman race. Zhuowen's divine sense detected that Li Yang's cultivation was only at the late-stage Genesis Lord realm, which was slightly weaker than the quadruple killer. However, the aura that suddenly erupted was so terrifying that it was much stronger than the quadruple killer's peak. As expected of an alien race, you are indeed much stronger than human cultivators of the same level. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. It wasn't that he hadn't interacted with the alien races of the primitive heaven domain before. He had interacted with Kong Shi of the Phoenix people before. Therefore, he knew that alien races were much stronger than human cultivators of the same level. Of course, this depended on which alien race it was in the primitive heaven domain. After all, the alien races of the primitive heaven domain were also divided into different grades. For example, the top 10 races of the primitive heaven domain had powerful bloodlines. Even an ordinary member of the top 10 races was much stronger than human cultivators. Zhuowen had read books about the races of the primitive heaven domain before, and knew that the mermaid race was one of the top 10 races of the primitive heaven domain. However, it was ranked last among the top 10 races. Even so, it was still one of the top 10 races of the primitive heaven domain. Its foundation wasn't any weaker than the Dao palaces of the Xianmi heaven domain. Although Li Yang's cultivation wasn't high, he was very strong. Even the quadruple killer's expression couldn't help but change slightly when she felt Li Yang's aura. However, She was soon overjoyed. Li Yang's strength was beyond her expectations. Even if she fought with Li Yang at her peak, she wouldn't have the confidence to win. She might even be killed. Now that Li Yang was going to attack Zhuowen, she knew that Zhuowen was going to suffer. When the time came, she would assist Li Yang. She knew that Zhuowen would definitely die. Human, you think you are invincible after defeating the Blood Prison's quadruple killer? How dare you look down on me? Li Yang's voice was slightly hoarse and filled with anger. When the quadruple killer heard Li Yang say that she was a piece of trash, she was so angry that she almost spat out blood. However, the quadruple killer was more rational and didn't act impulsively. She was now looking forward to Li Yang finishing Zhuowen. No, it's just that in my opinion, you are even more trash than quadruple killer. I didn't even need to use that move just now to defeat you, Zhuowen said. He could tell that the mermaid's powerful strength was mainly amplified by her naturally powerful physical strength. If they fought head-on, how could Li Yang be a match for Zhuowen, who had cultivated the Panga's sacred body? Was of the four killer, was of the heavens. Was Li Yang, the quadruple killers of the god. Yang's of the heaven great, was of the killer, was of the death. Was of the killer, Yang god. If the quadruple killer fought Zhuowen head-on, she would have been defeated a long time ago. How could she fight with Zhuowen to such an extent? Li Yang was obviously the kind of person who fought head-on. Although the power he showed was indeed stronger than quadruple killer, Zhuowen found this kind of opponent easier to deal with than quadruple killer. In layman's terms, an opponent like Li Yang was completely restrained by Zhuowen's Panga sacred body. In other words, the alien races in the primitive heavenly realm who relied on their physical strength were also restrained by Zhuowen's Panga sacred body. After all, in terms of physical strength, Zhuowen was basically invincible among the same level. Zhuowen's words immediately made Li Yang burst into an uproar. Li Yang's eyes were wide open, and his eyes were red. It was obvious that he was very angry. You are really courting death. After killing Thorpe, you still dare to provoke me. Today, I will make you die a horrible death, and then bring your body to Lord Sauron. Li Yang roared angrily. He kicked the void with his right foot, and a terrifying power spread out. He rushed out like an arrow and instantly rushed in front of Zhuowen. Boom! Li Yang clenched the 5 fingers of his right hand into a fist and fiercely punched towards Zhuowen's face. The force of his fist tore through the air and exploded with a deafening sound, as if thunder had struck the earth. Many of the cultivators present could feel the horror of Li Yang's punch. Even quadruple killer's face changed slightly. On the other hand, Li Yang's eyes were filled with ruthlessness. His punch relied on the combination of his cultivation and physical strength. Even a peak god of creation, who was quadruple kill, might not necessarily be able to take this punch head-on. Although the young man in front of him was strong and might be able to take his punch, he would probably pay a high price. Idiot! Zhuowen sneered. He opened his right hand and grasped Li Yang's fist. All the power of the Pangu's sacred body burst out as he clenched his fist. Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking rang out. Li Yang's pupils shrank into needles. The intense pain caused him to involuntarily let out a heart-wrenching scream. What? Li Yang is an elite of the merfolk tribe, and his physical body is extremely powerful. Even pinnacle Genesis lords are no match for him. This young man actually managed to crush Li Yang's fist in a head-on clash. Just how terrifying is this guy's physical body? There are indeed some human cultivators who cultivate their physical bodies. However, even if these cultivators cultivate their physical bodies to be extremely strong, it is still difficult for them to compare with the physical bodies of foreign experts. It is easy for them to be at a disadvantage in a head-on collision. However, this guy really defies common sense. What is this guy's background? He is so strong and so young. I'm afraid he is also a peerless genius from a Tao palace force. This kid is extremely unfamiliar. In the ancient city of darkness, I've seen monstrous geniuses like Zhongli Haoyan and Yi Qidong, but I've never seen this kid before. I don't even know what faction he comes from. Everyone discussed animatedly as if a pot had exploded. Clearly, Zhuo Wen's sudden display of this skill shocked them greatly. While everyone was discussing, Zhuo Wen's left fist landed on Li Yang's face. Li Yang screamed again as he was hit by Zhuo Wen and fell to the ground, creating a huge pit in the ruins. Quadruple Killer's mouth was slightly open as he began to retreat. Only now did she know that the young man in front of her was so terrifying. Fortunately, she did not fight him head-on in the beginning. Otherwise, she would end up even more miserable than Li Yang. Chapter 2930. The Power of the Fated Space-Time Kill. Run. Xisha had grasped the timing very well. The moment Zhuo Wen knocked Li Yang to the ground with a punch, she used an escape technique and drilled into the void. Like a loach in water, she quickly escaped. Unfortunately, Zhuo Wen had long been on guard against Xisha. Now that Xisha was escaping quickly, Zhuo Wen sneered. He pointed at the void with his right hand and said indifferently, "Today, I'll use you to test my self-created remarkable ability, the Fated Space-Time Kill." A mysterious power shot out from Zhuo Wen's fingertip, and terrifying invisible ripples appeared in the surroundings. Soon after, an enormous purple river flowed out from the void behind Zhuo Wen. The purple river was very fast, chasing after Xisha, who had escaped into the void. Strangely enough, wherever the purple river passed, it was as if time and space had stopped. Xisha, who was shuttling through the void, felt it especially strongly. She only felt that time and space around her had stopped, and no matter how she escaped, it was like she was running in place. At the same time, she felt that the trajectory of her fate seemed to have been reversed, as if she was destined to be swept up and eroded by the purple river. This feeling of fate made her feel a sense of fear, a fear of the unknown power. No, when the purple river caught up with Xisha and swept her into it, Xisha let out a shrill scream and then lost all signs of life. The onlookers saw Xisha's body float out from the void in the distance. There were no injuries on his body, but Xisha had died just like that. Such an inexplicable death made the onlookers feel a chill in their hearts. They looked at the young man with the scar not far away, and their eyes were filled with awe and fear. But at the same time, they were even more puzzled. Who was this guy who had suddenly appeared? He was so powerful that he was definitely not a nobody in the Xianmi heavenly domain. But no matter how they looked at him carefully, they still could not figure out his origin. It was as if he had suddenly appeared. After Xisha and Li Yang died one after another, the 5 merfolk elites brought by Li Yang were filled with fear. They quickly sent a message to Zoro and quickly fled. Li Yang was a late-stage Lord of Creation powerhouse. He was quite a famous powerhouse in the merfolk race. Meanwhile, the 5 of them were only at the early stage of the God of Creation stage, so they were much weaker than Li Yang. Even if the 5 of them joined forces, they would at most be in a stalemate with Li Yang and might even be at a disadvantage. Now, the scarred young man who had suddenly appeared in front of them had killed Li Yang in an unstoppable manner. The 5 of them knew very well that even if the 5 of them joined forces, they would definitely not be a match for the scarred young man in front of them. If he didn't escape now, when would he? Zhuo Wen looked at the 5 fleeing mermaids indifferently with a cold smile on his lips. However, he did not give chase. Instead, he slowly took out an ordinary wooden bow. This wooden bow looked very ordinary and even a little shabby, The onlookers did not understand what was going on. They wondered why this person would take out such a useless wooden bow. This wooden bow did not have any divine artifact aura at all. At most, it was just a wooden bow from the mortal domain. Could it be that this person was planning to use this wooden bow to kill the 5 fleeing merfolk? It can't be, right? Isn't this guy too arrogant? He wants to kill 5 early-stage Lords of Creation stage merfolk with a wooden bow. This is simply too pretentious. This person has indeed gotten a little carried away. I want to see how powerful this shabby bow is. If he can't even kill a single merfolk, that would be too embarrassing. When they realized that Zhuo had really taken out an arrow and knocked it on the wooden bow, everyone's face was filled with black lines. It seemed like their guess was right. This guy really planned to use this broken bow to chase after the 5 mermaids. The 5 fleeing merfolk were actually a little on edge. When Zhuo had used the Destiny Space-Time kill earlier, Quadruple Kill, who had escaped into the void, had died inexplicably. Quadruple Kill was the 4th killer of the Blood Prison's 7 killers. Apart from the first 3 killers, Quadruple Kill could be said to be the strongest killer in the Blood Prison. The Blood Prison's killers were proficient in escape techniques, and Quadruple Kill was even more proficient in this. His escape technique was so fast that they could not even see his shadow. They originally thought that Quadruple Kill would definitely be able to escape. However, they did not expect that Quadruple Kill would die inexplicably after this young man used that strange technique. He did not even have any external injuries. They knew very well that if this young man also used that technique just now, they would definitely follow in the footsteps of Quadruple Kill and Li Yong. Therefore, they were very smart. The moment they fled, they split into 5 different directions. This way, they would not be caught in one fell swoop. That technique looked very powerful. They guessed that there must be a limit to using it. If they fled separately, their chances of escaping would be much higher. However, they found that the young man behind them did not chase after them. Instead, he took out an ordinary wooden bow and wanted to kill them. This made them heave a sigh of relief. At the same time, they secretly mocked him. This guy was really arrogant. He actually intended to use such an ordinary object to kill them. He was simply ignorant. Zhuo naturally felt the strange look in the eyes of the surrounding people. The corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. He pulled the bowstring to 1/3 of an arc and immediately loosened his fingers. Boom! A thunderous sound resounded. The arrow swept out at an extremely fast speed with monstrous killing intent. It seemed to have transcended the limits of time and space. The moment the arrow swept out, the originally clamorous crowd became extremely silent. This was because they felt the terrifying killing intent on the arrow that swept out violently. That killing intent made them feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. It was too terrifying and difficult to face directly. A pained cry sounded out in the distance as a fleeing merman was shot by an arrow. Because he could not withstand the terrifying killing intent and power, he was directly torn to pieces by the power of the arrow. His body and soul were destroyed. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. This merfolk was an elite of the merfolk race. Although his strength was not as strong as Li Yang's, he was still an early-stage god of creation powerhouse. His status in the merfolk race was not low. Moreover, it was not easy to cultivate such a god of creation level merfolk. Now, he was directly killed by a wooden bow and an arrow. This was simply too shocking. Of course, among the spectating crowd, there were also discerning cultivators. They could tell that the arrow was not ordinary. It was a god of creation level divine arrow. However, even if it was a god of creation level divine arrow, it could at most injure a god of creation powerhouse. To kill a god of creation with a single arrow especially one that was of the God of creation level, was simply too inconceivable. Could it be that this divine arrow was strengthened by the wooden bow? That's why it was so powerful. Some people thought to themselves. They looked at the slightly worn-out wooden bow in Zhuowen's hand with a serious expression. Chapter 29:31. Sapu ah. 3 miserable cries rang out as another 3 merfolk elites were killed by the divine arrows. All of them were killed by a single arrow. However, just as Zhuowen was about to fire his 5th arrow, the 5th merman elite actually turned around and charged toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows. Seeing the determined expression on the merman elite's face, he knew that this merman elite knew that he couldn't escape and wanted to fight with his life on the line. Since this merman elite wasn't going to escape, Zhuowen naturally didn't plan to waste his arrows. Even Li Yang had been defeated by him in a head-on battle. This god of creation, initial stage elite mermaid, was no different from an ant to Zhuowen. Zhuowen only needed one move to defeat this merman elite. I say, fighting with your life on the line is the biggest mistake you've made. I only need one move to... Zhuowen was just about to say something, but before he could finish, the merman elite kneeled down a few hundred meters away from Zhuowen. Sir, I failed to recognize Mao Tai. I shouldn't have offended you. As long as you spare my life, I'm willing to submit to you. This merman elite was trembling with tears and snot running down his face. He didn't dare to look at Zhuowen. Clearly, he was scared out of his wits by Zhuowen's methods. Zhuowen was a little dazed. This elite merman, named Sa-Pu, was a little too tactful. Zhuowen originally didn't plan to let Sa-Pu go. However, after thinking about it, he nodded and said, "Give me your divine sense imprint, and I can consider not killing you." Sa-Pu straightforwardly gave up his divine sense imprint without hesitation. Then, he thanked Zhuowen profusely for not killing him. Zhuowen was a little speechless. He was only considering not killing him, but this guy was taking it for granted. Putting away Sa-Pu's spiritual soul imprint, Zhuowen did not intend to kill Sa-Pu, but had other ideas. Although he had entered the dark ancient city, he was completely clueless about the path ahead. This Sa-Pu obviously came from the innermost part of the dark ancient city, so he definitely knew where the temporary alliance between the alien race and human cultivators had explored. Moreover, he wasn't particularly clear about which forces were in the alliance this time. Furthermore, he had killed the elites of the merman race and killed an expert like Li Yang. He was afraid that he had offended the merman race. It was naturally inappropriate for him to go there rashly. He had to ask clearly before coming up with a countermeasure. At the same time, Zhuowen realized that after he had killed Li Yang and the 5 merman elites, the points on the Universal Star Token had increased by over 9,000 points. Moreover, Li Yang alone provided him with 5,000 points, while the 4 merfolk elites each provided him with 1,000 points. In addition, he had already accumulated close to 1,000 points, which meant that he now had more than 10,000 points on the Universal Peak token. If Zhuowen was still in the Universal Star Tower, he would have seen his name appear on the Universal Contribution list. With more than 10,000 points, his ranking had already reached the 70th position. Because his ranking was relatively low, and most of the cultivators in the Universal Star Tower were not around, Zhuowen's sudden appearance on the Universal Contribution list did not cause much of a stir. In fact, no one even noticed. However, Zhuowen was very distressed. His goal was to obtain 1,000,000 points to exchange for the transcending heaven-grade elixirs in the Universal Star Tower. Now, he had only accumulated 10,000 points, which was too far away from 1,000,000 points. Zhuowen also knew that he could not rush it. 1,000,000 points were not easy to accumulate. If others were to know of Zhuowen's distress, they would definitely be angered to the point of vomiting blood. Many cultivators had risked their lives in the Star Wars battlefield for hundreds or thousands of years, but they were still unable to enter the Universal Contribution List. However, this guy had only been in the Star Wars battlefield for a few days, yet he had already accumulated more than 10,000 points and even entered the Universal Contribution List. This speed was much faster than Zhongli Hao Yan, who was ranked first on the Universal Contribution List, but this guy actually thought it was too slow. After all, there were relatively few cultivators who could surpass their level. Most cultivators' combat power was at an ordinary level. It was already very difficult for them to defeat foreign beings of the same level. There was even a high chance that they would be killed instead, let alone surpassing their level. Killing foreign beings of the same level and lower level gave cultivators very few points. It was only a dozen or even a few points. If one wanted to enter the Universal Contribution List, they either had to be terrifying geniuses like Zhongli, Hao Yan, and Yi Qidong, who could surpass their level and kill enemies, or they had to be old foxes on the battlefield, who had spent a long time accumulating a few or a dozen points. Most ordinary cultivators were cannon fodder. For people like Zhuowen, his original body's cultivation level was only that of the Lord of Mystery, but his clone cultivated the Pangu's sacred body. His true strength was very terrifying. The Universal Star token clearly did not distinguish the Pangu's sacred body that the clone cultivated and gave all the credit to the original body. Therefore, Zhuowen had actually used the identity of the Lord of Mystery to surpass two major levels to kill the Lord of Creation. The points obtained from killing foreign beings two major levels above him were naturally very terrifying. Come with me. Zhuowen picked up Sa Pu and disappeared on the spot. The surrounding cultivators all looked at the departing Zhuowen with fear, but no one dared to follow him. This was a ruthless person who could kill a late-stage Lord of Creation. He was too powerful. If they followed him and angered him, their lives would be in danger. However, there were indeed people who were not afraid of death. In the crowd, 3 figures quietly followed. They were very careful and very cautious. After leaving the crowd, Zhuowen came to the ruins of a palace that seemed to be intact. In the ancient city of darkness, ruins like this could be found everywhere. However, the ruins that Zhuowen had chosen were slightly more complete. Zhuowen casually threw Sa Pu to the side and said indifferently, "I saw you guys send a message just now. Was it to that Sauron you guys were talking about?" Sa Pu nodded and bowed. He lowered his head and said, "Yes, sir." "Tell me about this Sauron," Zhuowen said casually. "Sir Sauron is a genius of our merfolk race. He cultivated for less than 3,000 years and is already a peak Lord of Creation. His battle prowess is very strong, and his status in the race is comparable to that of ordinary elders. Sauron has a younger brother called Sa Pu. It's said that you killed him." At this point, Sa Pu seemed to be even more careful. He secretly glanced at Zhuowen, afraid that he would anger him. "I see. So, Sa Pu has a genius brother." Zhuowen nodded, but he was a little surprised. Sa Pu's cultivation level was very low. He was only a Lord of Destiny. He had thought that he was just a small fry. The merfolk race would not go so far as to investigate him. For a small fry,